Thursday, February 6th. Anyone want to talk about a groundhog? Apparently something happened with a groundhog.
He did his job.
Okay.
He did it well. I like what he.
Groundhog's Day.
I guess so.
First out of the gate this morning, we are going to stand for the pledge. And after that, I would ask that if you would join us, we're going to have a moment of silence to allow all those personally to do and think about what is going on. A couple things I want to remind you of. We had a very, very serious accident in Carroll County at another one of those infamous intersections that we continue to see problems at, 31 in Medford. I actually was at an event with the superintendent of schools when that was going on, and our first responders and our law enforcement saw what I have seen for many, many years, and that is just a serious, critical amount of trauma. So it affects you. And so I ask that you keep all of those that were on that scene in your thoughts. And again, right next door, as we continue our regional approach to reach out to our neighbors, we had a problem in Anne Arundel County last night where 2 police officers were shot. One of them is in critical condition and shock trauma. I reached out to County Executive Stuart Pittman this morning and had a brief conversation with him. We need to keep all of those folks as well in our thoughts this morning. So with that, we'll rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, it's good to be back. There's a lot of stuff going around. School system, you want to elaborate on that? I've got a school nurse that I live with that's been down for 4 days now. There's just a ton of stuff going around, and I got a little touch of that last week. So here's my public safety. Okay. That happens on occasion, even if I'm not sick. So here's my public safety message for today. Wash your hands. You can really combat this by just merely doing that. And I've been fist bumping a lot of folks lately. That handshaking thing. I don't know, Steve, you and I were at an event the other night, and boy, were we shaking hands. You know what the first thing is I did before I left there? Yeah, I jumped in the sink. So anyway.
You took a bath?
In the sink.
He's small.
I could fit. So anyway, there's my public safety message for the day. It's also Black History Month, and I encourage everyone to take advantage of all the activities and all of the things that are going on in Carroll that honors that. And we do have many of them, and not only in Carroll, but in our surrounding jurisdictions. So be mindful of that, and certainly take advantage of the educational opportunities associated with that. And I know our school system does a good bit of that as well. Let's do priority Carroll, and then we'll jump right for the school system, because these folks probably got to get back to work. So Commissioner Boucher, we'll do our personal, and then I'll let you do the other. Okay?
All right, you got it. Well, good morning, folks. Thanks for being here today. This week, I had the honor of touring the Carroll Tourism Center here in town. I had another tour, and actually, when I went to the building where City Hall is, I seen Councilman Dennis Frazier's name on a plaque. We're very fortunate to have a tourist system set up in the county, which welcomes people from other jurisdictions into our neighborhood and get used to our community and familiar with it. So it's a great asset. I'd like to thank Bonnie Staub and Ann Cox for giving me the tour, and we went and had lunch at the Rock Salt. I had a wonderful day with them. And on Tuesday, I seen on our agenda today, we're having reforestation program set up in Gillis Falls, which is very close to my home. So I took an interest in that. I contacted Chris Hine, and by that afternoon, he had me out on site, going hiking with my boots on, looking at where we're planting trees. We have a tremendous staff, and I'm very grateful to everyone in the resource management for taking the time to get me out there and seeing what we're actually doing. Also, Commissioner Wance mentioned the accident on the intersection of 31 and Medford Road. That's in my district. It's a big concern. I was receiving notices that night about that accident, how one individual said they've known 6 people that died on that road, so they're very much concerned. The sheriff briefed me on the situation, what happened, and also advised me for the citizens out there watching and listening that we will increase our presence through law enforcement to bring the traffic down to a lower speed. Plus, all the parties involved are going to review and analyze that area and make recommendations of how we can make it safer, maybe a flashing light. I don't know what all the particulars are. That's not my expertise, but I want the community to know that rest assured that we will take care of this and try to eliminate those deaths from happening again on that road. So thank you very much for all of our law enforcement partners.
Just to piggyback on that a minute, I also have had quite a few complaints and accidents in certain state highways. And as you said, we've asked the state highway to evaluate and help us make those intersections safer for people. One at 140 and Sandy Mount Road is a dangerous intersection, a lot of accidents in there. And this past week, that has been greater than most, I guess, as far as accidents. But state highway is really trying to help us evaluate those and help those areas. I just want to say, glad to see the school system here today. Monday, I do have a tour with some of the members of the school system, looking at the technologies, the higher-end technologies associated with agriculture, and I do appreciate their willingness to look at the aspects where we're heading in the next 10 years or 20 years, so thank you.
I guess we have a common theme dealing with these intersections, and State Highway and MDOT is definitely our partner in trying to come to better solutions. But while we're doing that, the input that I receive from them along with our law enforcement is, if you see something, say something on intersections and on roads. Because what's happening is when I bring up an intersection to State Highway and they show me all of the accidents that happen, they are very small numbers compared to what actually is happening, because people drive away. They exchange insurance cards, whatever, and then they move out of that intersection. So they don't highlight all of the activity that's happening in some of those challenge intersections down Meyer and across the board, across the county. If you see something, say something. If you see speeding, if you see erratic behavior, you know, I'm sure the police are very open to saying, please call us and let us know. So then they can put attention to those intersections and those roads. Completely different note. A few of us attended the Youth Services Bureau's Chocolate Ball on Saturday. It was a wonderful event. It was a packed event. Very good food from Libertori's and from Genie Bird Desserts, but most importantly, the community coming together once again, rallying to support a very wonderful organization with the CCYSB, and how they're taking care of our community and continue to take care of our community. So,
Now, we did get in a little bit of a issue on Saturday night there with that.
We did?
With our shadowing a commissioner for the day.
I did. You did.
Yeah, well, we did, and we offered the auctioning off somebody to buy the chance to shadow a commissioner for the day and lunch with us and the sheriff. So it went for $700, I believe, and
Somebody paid for that?
somebody's paying for that. Yeah, they want to be here with us, so we
so
made
those
it.
that weren't in attendance are the ones being shadowed.
So we made a few extra dollars for the Youth Service Bureau.
I'm surprised there's only
We could do that.
We could do that.
I know we could.
Let them take a tour.
Next time you have a tour that includes lunch at Roxall, let me know, please.
All right.
Come on. Say, last night I was honored to administer the oath of office to the new officers at the Westminster Fire Department. First time that they've asked me to do that. I came and I'm surprised there's like 20 different officers there that take the oath. So, and remember, all these people are volunteers, and then they step up and they do additional work. They're, taking whatever I'm sure you know, Commissioner Wentz, whatever the jobs that they have to do as officers for the fire departments. But it was a tremendous honor to do that, because these people, let's face the fact, besides the sheriff's department and the local police departments, make this county the safest county in the state of Maryland. It's not just the police, it's also fire and EMS services. So thank you very much for what you do, and thank you for inviting me to administer the oath of office.
All right, a couple quick things from me. I want to thank all of those that were involved in an unfortunate incident that we had here at the county office building on Monday. I'm not going to get into the details about what occurred there, because I'd get on my rant and raving about the silliness that this world is experiencing now when it comes to politics. That's where I'm going to stop. But unfortunately, as it always typically is, the person that was targeted was not the person that even got close to becoming involved in the incident. It was one of our employees, and it's just ridiculous. So my point is to thank law enforcement. I know, Brandon, you were involved, and Dave, is Dave here? Yeah, there's Dave. Stop sitting right in front of me, Dave. There was a lot of our law enforcement, a lot of our fire department personnel and EMS, and we also received mutual aid from Baltimore County as they brought a hazardous materials unit up here to deal with the absurdity. So thank you all, and thankfully it turned out in a positive way. Superintendent of Schools is here today, Dr. Lockhart. It's an honor to have you here today. And he and I attended an event the other evening. The Kiwanis Club honors Student of the Month. Man, it was a packed house at the Best Western. And we shook a lot of hands. And more importantly, we heard some stories about some amazing students that we have in the county school system. And take that a step further, and they're amazing because of the folks that are in our schools that are teaching our amazing students. And today we're going to pay tribute to those that counsel those students as well. So that was a great event. I want to thank the Kiwanis Club, and if you get a chance to go to that, because that's that's a regular event that they have, take advantage of that and attend, because man, did we hear some fantastic stories about wonderful young people. And then yesterday, I was honored to be in the chamber to hear the governor give the State of the State address. And it's always an honor to represent local government in that chamber. And I think I don't need to go on about how myself and the rest of my colleagues feel about our governor and the tremendous things that have occurred as a result of him being in office down there, this being his 6th year now. So it was a great State of the State address, and we look forward to working with he and his cabinet. And I talked with most of them yesterday as we continue to move through 2020. And I can assure you that no one tore up his speech when he was finished. Okay. Commissioner Boucher.
Yes, sir.
I'd be remiss if I didn't also introduce, and we have 3 of our school board members in attendance with us today as well. The president, Donna Savigny, is here, and also Tara Battaglia and Marcia Herbert. Folks, thank you for being here as well, and we appreciate the collaboration that we have with you as we continue to move forward in a positive manner to ensure that our school system remains number 1 in the state, like everything else here in Carroll. Commissioner Boucher.
Thank you, sir. Before I address the issue of the school and recognizing their hard work and accomplishments, I want to state Captain Sobel's in here today, and last week I gave him recognition for giving me a tour to the detention center, and I was worried that if I slaughtered his name, he'd do something to me. Now he shows up with all these officers. All right, on to good things. I'd like to give recognition to a couple of women who work for the school system. I was reading the newspaper and seeing an article written on them on the service they're providing for the county school system, which is a big help to students who are faced with the impact and negativity of not only the opioid epidemic, but mental health issues. And this has moved forefront into their perception of how we're teaching and educating our children. After all, a child can't go to school and learn his math and reading if he's worried about a parent who's overdosed the night before and all the other trauma that goes with it. So the resources that you two are applying to our school system to help these children deserves recognition, and that's why you're here today. Certificate of Appreciation. This certificate is awarded to Kathleen McCormick and Kristen Cavey. Congratulations on receiving the Maryland High School Counselor of the Year Award from the Maryland School Counselor Association. School counselors are a vital resource for students, parents, and teachers, providing academic and emotional support and guidance. It is an honor to have professionals like you who are devoted to their careers advocating for students in Carroll County Public Schools. Thank you very much. We want to do a photo with them?
We're going to do a photo op, but before we do that, the superintendent of schools is here, and Dr. Lockhart, the floor is yours, sir. Yep, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for having us and recognizing our outstanding employees, in this case, our outstanding counselors. In the state of Maryland, the Counselor Association that you mentioned, Commissioner Boucher, recognizes 3 counselors of the year, elementary, middle, and high. We happen to have 2 of the 3 recognized in the entire state of Maryland. So that speaks alone. You referenced a little bit of the work that happens by our counselors. It's incredible, the gamut from supporting students, whether that's mental health, issues with classes and scheduling, supporting teachers, families, you name it. It's sort of many hats that are worn to support. And I had the honor to go over and visit both of these outstanding folks at their schools, and just listening to the students provide some feedback about what these counselors mean to them and the impact they have on them that's all we needed to hear. So we appreciate the recognition. We know the outstanding things that are happening through our counselors, and are very, very, like I said, honored to be able to be here today to recognize these outstanding folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lockhart. President of School Board, Donna.
So I really want to thank you for having us here today and to recognize these 2 wonderful ladies for the amazing job that they've done for many years, and so glad to see the recognition. We've made it a strategic plan focus on the school board side, and I think the benefits of that are you are seeing the benefits of that. You've provided us a lot of support in that regard, and being here today and really recognizing the fruits of the labor and the efforts that they put in is just amazing. So thank you for having us here today. We appreciate the recognition and look forward to our collaborative efforts with you going forward.
Thank you. And finally, ladies, I know you guys like to talk a lot because you're counselors, so let's be clear. So let's we'd like to hear from you 2 as well.
That's usually in private they talk.
Well, okay.
I think we'd start by saying thank you so much for having us here. It means the world to be recognized and to focus on the work that school counselors across our county are doing. Ms. Klinger has been an amazing mentor, I know, to me the last years that I've been a school counselor, previously working as an elementary teacher. So people taking focus and, honing in on what we do as school counselors and how we're helping families and students means a lot to us for you guys to recognize that.
I'd also like to thank the commissioners and the school board, Dr. Lockhart and Ms. Klinger, and all of the teachers, staff, faculty, assistants in our schools, because we are one or 2 or 3 personnel in the school. So we appreciate the support of our community and the people within our school to help us meet the needs of our students the best that we can. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I just want to say, I don't think you can give a job description to a counselor. Everything and anything comes your way, and I tell you, a good counselor's worth their weight in gold, so thank you.
Thank you so much.
I'd just like to say I appreciate everything counselors do. Some people are probably aware that I've taught for 40 years. And I appreciate all the heads up that you get from the counselors, because you have students that come into your classes and they might have some baggage from home, something happened the night before or something, and you get the heads up from the counselors, so we're extra aware of what's going on with that particular student, and that really means a lot to teachers in the classroom. Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And for me, people know I'm very proud of my family. Family means a lot. My children are doing wonderful. Continue on with schools. They're a product of our public education here in this community. And a large part of that is due to you and the counselors that not just are there for academics, but making these children into young adults, which takes a whole team effort of teachers and the athletics, the coaches, and also the counselors. So you are definitely a critical part of the team and molding our young children into young adults and then future leaders of our community. So thank you.
Okay, with that, we thank you so much, and you all deserve a big round of applause for all of you. And we're going to have a photo op, so I think the five of us will stay up here because I'd like to get everyone that's here today associated with them to be up here, so you guys can come up here and we'll get everybody in a nice photo. Is that what it does? Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Easy with me. Easy. Can you see everybody?
Yes.
Thank you.
Very good. Mr. Carver, great to see you today.
You got my number.
Yeah, we have your number.
In so many ways.
I know. All right, again, thank you all so very much, and keep up the fantastic work. We
You're welcome to stay for the end of the rest of the session, though.
yeah, right.
Back in school. Thank you very much.
You need coffee.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Fowler.
No one ever takes us up and staying for the whole session.
I know, I know, Mike, that you are just giddy with excitement about getting right back down to Annapolis as quickly as you can. So, without further ado, sir.
Yes, that's why I have a short report. And I always start with the good news, right?
How many
60 days left.
There it is.
Yeah, 30 days in. So some of the big news in the past week since I've seen you, the legislature did their veto overrides. They overrode 4 bills. The 3 most prominent were the Ban the Box bill, the repeal of the State Handgun Permit Review Board that was vetoed, and the expansion of the DREAM Act. So his veto of that. So those 3 are moving forward. And of course, yesterday we had the State of the State address, as you mentioned. The governor began with a strong note of bipartisanship, noting that what was happening in Washington, and basically used the time to outline his legislative package, retiree tax relief, school construction, education spending accountability, his transportation priorities, addressing crumbling infrastructure, the improvements in the Howard Street Tunnel to allow double stacking of trains coming out of the port, the environment, strengthening emission regulations, improvements to bay quality, and of course the EPA and Pennsylvania suit over pollutants into the Susquehanna. Also talked about redistricting, Maryland being the most gerrymandered state in the nation. He has a very strong crime bill, as you know, addressing violent offenders, witness intimidation. He wants to make the judges more accountable in their sentencing or create more transparency in their sentencing. And then he wrapped it up with another emphasis on the bipartisan nature of how we operate in Maryland. And we really don't want to imitate our neighbors to the south. So as far as legislation goes, of course, with the theme of the session being education funding, a lot of tax legislation continuing to flow. Interestingly, there's still a lot of subtraction modification bills being put forward. Again, MACO has a general policy is opposed to subtraction modifications because the way our tax structure is with the piggyback tax, that affects you as well. And so this is something that you have no say in. So the effort of MACO is to try to change these into tax credits. And that way, if a county wants to enact the same benefit, they can. So the focus so far appears to be primarily on retirees and veterans. And I know Commissioner Rothschild has some strong opinions on that.
Ross Steen.
Seriously?
Excuse me.
And now we're down to 4. Okay.
All right, well, it has been fun. See ya.
We've all
Commissioner
made that mistake.
Rothstein.
Thank you. One strike.
Yeah, and I know, let's stop for a moment here because I know, Ed, that you were pretty vocal in yesterday's MACO meeting, which was good because actually to have a colleague that is vocal at MACO on a positive note is sort of a change for me. I'll just leave it at that. But it was the argument or the challenge, let's say the challenge that you brought up was the fact that on this theme of tax credits and the continuing way in which we're seeing these things come across our desks, they're good, and there's no intent here to try to disrespect those that we would like to give tax credits for. The problem from MACO is, where does it stop? Because while we certainly want to support our veterans and give them all the tax credits that they deserve, oh, by the way, we've got police officers, we've got firefighters, we've got paramedics, we've got teachers, and where does it stop? To the point where we would be exhausted with the revenue because it would take a huge hit on local government. So the MACO effort has always been to look out for that and tell the state that, look, we agree. We think that you should be doing this, but do it at the state level and don't put it on the backs of your counties. So I want to commend you, Ed, because you stood up for the veterans yesterday and you had a little help in there because there's quite a few veterans that serve on the MACO Legislative Committee. Quite a few firefighters, too. It's interesting that we have that mix down there this year. But you made some very valid points, and it garnered a huge discussion down there. So I want to commend you for that.
I agree, and let me just add a couple quick points, because I'm not done yet about having this conversation. Although we don't like to, I guess, use the words quid pro quo anymore. However, in that in mind, Maryland has been the recipient of an extreme uptick from our federal government in dealing with the military. The base realignment and closure programs, and the last one that just finished in 2011, Maryland was a massive gainer in that. Fort Meade receiving 5,500 folks, Major Command from Jersey coming down to Aberdeen Proving Grounds. The point about this is that this increase of our military presence in Maryland is going to increase the number of veterans that will reside in Maryland. And because it's a choice. Somebody's either going to go back home to where they started, go to a place where they were very comfortable, or stay in the last place that they were in the military, and that's a large part. So with that said, for us to retain that community, that veteran community, we should be looking at incentives, and that's what our governor is asking us to do, and he's been pushing on that. So with that in mind, we just have to look at how are we going to retain our veteran community, and specifically our retired veteran community here in Maryland, that are given a lot of other choices by dozens of states where taxes are exempt on our pension, and people are leaving because of that. So that's the argument that needs to be made. It's an education to the legislators and to MACO on the impact of our military community and its rise here in Maryland. And if we do not embrace it, then it's going to be very tough for us to continue to increase that presence. That's the education. Others were trying to educate me on taxes. I said, I got that part. Let me educate you on what's happening within the military over the last 20 years, and specifically the last base realignment closure, that Maryland was a massive gainer. So more to follow on that.
Yeah, and there is, and you know, to that information that you just shared with us, that's the perfect message that our legislators need to hear.
Exactly.
The Democratic legislation specifically, because there is just, and Mike, you can back me up on this, you're down there every day. We're only down there a day or two a week. The mindset is if there's anything tax break wise, we're not interested. We're just not, don't talk to
Exactly.
us right now. We don't want to hear it. So that message would to be, and I would suggest that you sign up to testify when these things come up, and I don't know when the dates are. We'd have to get you down there specifically, but because of your background and what you have lived, you'd be the perfect person to sit on the other side of that and tell them exactly what they need to hear. So whether it would make a difference or not, I don't know, but maybe
We'll put that on the calendar.
yeah, maybe there's my suggestion for my
And
colleague.
I appreciate you bringing this up now, and Mary Grace, we can also talk about this because the community needs to continue to understand the impact. So, okay.
But again, from a Mako standpoint, and you gotta, you know, I'm always putting on 14 different hats when I'm down there, because when they bring up firefighter tax breaks, and I've got my firefighter hat on, I'm like, absolutely, go. Oh, but wait, if we do that, where are we gonna make up the revenue that we're gonna lose as a result of that here in the county? And I can give you a 3-letter word. That's where we'd make it up. And I'm not so sure there's a stomach for that. So it's tough when you're balancing and putting on the different hats down there. So
It is, and of course, Mako has the same issue with counties with different perspectives, and try to balance that perspective and get it into one cohesive, coherent message. So, but yes, clearly the governor made some of those similar points when it came to retarees.
I know.
They want to keep retirees in the state, but they're fleeing to low tax states. So we'll definitely do that. The digital advertising tax, I mentioned that briefly to you. I just wanted to recount what I heard in the hearing, because I thought it was very interesting. So this is the tax on digital advertising. So these large platforms that are present, that we use, want to tax things like banner. So think about when you're on the internet, right? Banner ads at the top of whatever site you're on, search engine ads. You type something in, the first half of the listing comes back as sponsored ads. The kinds of ads that come up because you were maybe browsing for a particular item, and the next time you go on, that item is showing up in a column on the site. So at the hearing, former Governor, Colorado Governor Roy Romer was there at the age of 93, sharp as a tack, and his son Paul Romer, who's a Nobel laureate and an economist with the World Bank. He came at this a little differently. Senator Miller and President Ferguson were talking about the revenue, the taxing and the revenue, because this is essentially advertising that is directed to Marylanders. So they were talking about the revenue because Marylanders are subject to the advertising. Maryland should get the revenue. Mr. Romer's argument was this is really a bad, that the digital advertising itself is a bad practice. It's a malign practice, that it's taking your data and that these large platforms are taking your data and selling them. And in turn, the advertising is now being directed back at you. So his argument was, you can tax it, that's fine. I don't care if you tax it and put the money wherever you want to put it, but the effort should really end. I mean, he was talking about it's a bad thing, but it's probably not going to change, so you may as well get the revenue for it. So I thought that was very interesting. They expect $250 million. The president did sort of concede that it's going to be heavily amended. There was talk of constitutional challenges because you're targeting one particular type of advertising, that it would ultimately have to go to print, to media. So I just think that's an interesting one to keep our eye on. That's a big piece of what they would like to fund. And the revenue is directed specifically to the blueprint for Maryland, the Kerwin bill.
And again, the bottom line is, it's a tax.
It's a
So
tax.
for for that part of the media, they look at Maryland and say, well, whether you like the banners or the advertising or not, then that shines a negative light on Maryland as it pertains to them, because why would they want to come here for additional tax? It's tax, and where does it stop down there?
And it's significant. It starts out at 2.5%, but it eventually goes to 10% of the assessable base for gross revenues exceeding 15 million. So,
Which could
it's-
essentially have these media outfits just pull out of here. So
Well, I don't know enough about it, but I'm not sure how you would not direct advertising. I'm sure it could be done. I'm sure
Yeah.
it could be done, but.
yeah, it's just, okay.
Yeah, I just thought it was very interesting. One bill we saw, or you saw yesterday in your legislative committee meeting, was House Bill 621, the County Tax Fairness Act. So this goes back to the Wynn case. This would extend from 5 years to 20 years, the time over which the comptroller can withhold quarterly reimbursement to the local reserve account. So I think there's some recognition that maybe extend that to counties, give you that additional benefit. You saw something on school construction yesterday. House Bill 665 would require any school construction or new school that's funded by the state of 50% or more would be required to install a geothermal energy system. That was opposed pretty quickly by the body, so MEGA will be opposing that. Issues on land use, again, the constitutional amendment for environmental rights, we talked about that last year, that you have a right to pure water, pure air. Again, it's very broad and very vague, and most likely will again be defeated, but it's back again. There was a bill, House Bill 539, and a cross-file in the Senate, Senate Bill 457. This authorizes the creation of local resilience authorities. This is promoted primarily by Anne Arundel County and Howard County because they've seen significant flooding in the last couple of years. City Dock gets flooded pretty regularly down there in Annapolis these days, and of course the Ellicott City flooding that occurred. So that would authorize a county to set up a resilience authority that would be able to then borrow for projects to address what they believe are the results of climate change or the impacts of climate change. House Bill 589 is an interesting one. This would require food residuals. So unused food starting at 2 tons of residual food and then eventually falling to a 1/4 ton would have to be separated from the waste stream. And if a facility that can take this is located within 30 miles, you would be required to send it there. And so think large consumption of food, hospitals, schools, other institutional uses would have to separate their food waste out and send it to a separate facility. Didn't seem like a good idea to most of the folks in attendance yesterday, so that's going to be imposed.
Excuse me, Mike, what is
Yes.
the separate facility? I'm not adding up. What do you want done with that food?
Yeah, it would be sort of an incinerator type of place that would,
Composting facility.
yeah, composting facility,
Some
exactly.
sort of maybe
Yes.
like feed the homeless or something like that.
No, that's a great idea, but that makes too much sense, Eric.
Yeah, actually,
Burn it instead.
I think that's
So-
part of it. I think it's to actually be able to donate unused food that's not waste.
Right.
Okay.
So
That's part of it as well.
in the rest of that conversation is organic facilities, which is what they are talking about. So while this seems like it's fine on the surface, albeit just a tad bit absurd, what's the next step? Oh, I know, they're gonna make us build
Construct
an organic facility to the tune of millions of dollars. Because there's a distance there, you know, you have to be within 30 miles or something of an organic facility. I mean, you know, that's one of the things that just make you go, what? Add bamboo to that, because we're talking about bamboo, and then add the right signage on bathrooms. It's interesting.
Yes, I didn't even plan to discuss those. You have a bill which is essentially a ban the box for fire rescue and EMS. So it would prevent in your case, the fire company, from asking about prior convictions in the initial interview. Everyone that I've spoken to seems to think this is a bad idea. You're dealing with
Seems to think.
people who are at their most vulnerable, and so I have a feeling that's going to be strongly opposed.
Yeah, and the problem with that is they vetoed the governor's, the ban the box. They overrode his veto. So now they think the door's open. And I just don't understand that mindset. So we're not gonna check on anyone that has the potential to be a volunteer that would be in your house to take care of someone. I mean, can you imagine treating a child, and it's found out later on that there's some sort of child sexual offense things that this individual has gone through. Does that make sense to anyone, that we would just not do that at some point?
I have to believe that argument is going to win the day. I have
think
to.
so, too.
I'll be very, very
Yeah.
shocked. And
It is the
frankly
Maryland General
disappointed.
Assembly, though, you know.
It is. It is. But we're talking about the line of work that's distinctly different from typical employment.
It's our volunteer fire stations who, the last time I checked, 98% of them don't have an HR director sitting in the facility. So it's, I don't know.
Well, the strange thing about it is you would be able to ask that question on the second interview. So what is really the point?
Well,
of
right,
all?
it still remains there. It's just a matter of fact then that you spend the money on the individual to get to that point, just to go, oh, okay, by the way, no. Wouldn't you want to do that initially so that you didn't spend the money?
One would think. Yes. Health and Human Services, certainly Bill, I saw Ms. Steckel, that she's keeping her eye on, would require an annual appropriation of $1 million to expand aging in place. And MACO is very supportive of that. They'd like to amend the 10% requirement to fund senior villages, because many of the counties do not have senior villages, and that would certainly reduce the amount of money that would be appropriated. So that'll be a strong support. Also, there's a bill, House Bill 464, to enable community-based organizations like nonprofits to establish overdose and infection disease prevention sites. So these would be what we've talked about as safe injection sites. They would provide services like first aid, counseling, that sort of thing. And that's going to be very controversial, I think. The organization, MACO, will take no position on that. So I think that's going to be up to individual jurisdictions to weigh in on that bill. And we can talk a little bit more about that as it moves through the process. And of course, lastly, the Kerwin bill. Senator Pinsky announced on the Senate floor on Tuesday, I believe, that the text of the bill would be available. He didn't say the bill would be introduced, but the text of the bill would be available on either today or tomorrow. And it would essentially incorporate the recommendations and the formula as the commission put forward in the text of the bill. And a hearing is scheduled for the 17th of February, so it's a joint hearing with the 4 committees of jurisdiction. In the House, it's Appropriations and Ways and Means, where we have 2 members of our delegation. And in the Senate, Budget and Tax, and Education and Health and Environment. So that'll be in the joint hearing room in the DLS building, and I'm sure it will be an overflow crowd. And so we'll just start the process of working through this. It's going to be, I think, significantly amended. We talked about the way the formulas are built now, and I suspect they'll change. So we'll be keeping our eye on it. I'll keep you up to the date, up to the minute, updated on it. That's all I have for you today.
So, just so you know, we had a 2-hour conference call, I believe, Monday evening. Mike, we were on the phone for 2 hours, the rural counties, because of the amount of bills that have been dropped up to this point. And we went through some of them very quickly yesterday because folks needed to leave to get to the state of the state. But there is just a ton of bills that have dropped, and I don't know what the number's up
Yes.
to.
You're approaching 2,200 right
Okay.
now.
So, it's a good thing that we have Mike down there to keep an eye on all of them, because some of them are just unbelievable. They really are. So, I would suspect that, like other years, they'll get weeded out and they'll be gone. But the very fact that they were introduced in the first place just makes one go, what? So, so we're on it. The legislative meetings at MACO, as my colleague, Ed will attest to, are getting lengthier and lengthier. And, you know, the other thing is, too, for the first time this year, we actually had to have a roll call vote on one of the bills yesterday, because the tension is also ramping up down there, as we knew that it would. And it was interesting how that turned out.
Well, there are some national issues that are
Yeah.
starting to find their way.
So it's
To us,
a challenge. So,
Please keep us posted on that controversial issue of the safe injection locations.
Sure.
I know it's extremely controversial, and sometimes the solutions in politics are counterintuitive to what we instinctively think should be. So I know it affects us less than some other jurisdictions, but I'm really curious to find out what data is out there in other jurisdictions, other nations, if there's a positive to this. Because in the long term, I do see it as a potential to have a focus point to have contact with addicts and get them into the system for treatment of some sort, that it's a safe place, that they could communicate with health department staff or whatever, and try to get them in treatment. So please keep us posted and updated on that issue. I'd really appreciate it.
I will. Again, it's an authorizing bill, so it would enable the nonprofits to establish this. And with, I think, obviously with the approval of the local jurisdiction, but it is authorizing. But you're right. I mean, that's the intent of the bill. That's the sponsor's intent of the bill. And so you have a difference of opinion on whether we should provide those kinds of services, or whether there's an issue with enabling, an illegal act, for example, as one of the arguments, that drug use is illegal, so you're facilitating
It's
an illegal
conflicting.
act. Yes, exactly. So that's some of the argument that's being made now, but I'll certainly keep you in the
And
loop on
for the
that.
public, in no way am I endorsing or against this concept, but I really am all about the education of us as commissioners of how to address this opioid epidemic. And I'm willing to look at everything, at least get it on the table and educate us.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
anything else from anybody? Okay, Mike,
All
safe
right,
travels.
And again, my apologies, Commissioner Rothstein.
You'll do push-ups later, don't worry.
Push-ups.
Mr. Fowler, you do a wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is to make a decision today that was based on the public hearing and all the work that we've done up to this point in reference to our enhancement to the police pension disability benefits. Kim's here again, and Werner as well. So,
Okay, one thing just to follow up on what Mike said.
yeah, I was gonna say, give us a. oh,
HR did follow up with, the HR affiliates, been in touch with Mako about that ban the box for the public safety. So
Okay.
we've already provided comment on that as
Good.
well.
Okay, all right. So, I know that we've been through all the details. Is there a need to go over this again? The details? Do any of my colleagues need? So let's just skip that part of the, because I think we've been vetted to the nth degree on this, with all due respect. And, now it's up for us to make, decisions based upon what we have heard. And,
Correct.
And, where we'd like to see this as the end result here. So, let's just open it up for discussion here. With that being said, and I know there were a couple questions that were brought up, during the hearing.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I know that one of those was the allowance or.
The offset.
The offset.
The earned income offset.
I did some research on that, and I'm sure some of you guys did too, because that's how we roll up here. I quite frankly don't see the need for an offset at all. I just think it adds a whole level of work for you guys, let's be clear, because you'd have to get W-2s and do all that kind of stuff, and I just think and I also think it's just a tad bit, for me personally, a tad bit disrespectful. I mean, let's be clear. You know, these guys or gals deserve to get what they need, and I just don't see the need for the offset. So, I'll open it up.
I agree with you. I also have done some research on this, and a lot of places don't even have an offset, and I think that's an issue we don't even have to deal with.
Thoughts? I mean, I'm not sure on procedure here. Mr. Burke, do we need to vote on these things? Is that how it goes, or what do you want us to do here to make it official?
You need to make proposals for amendments to what has been presented to you.
Okay,
So that would be an amendment.
so that would be okay.
Correct, and then we'll have to go back and work with the pension attorney to have those amendments made to bring the final ordinance to you for signature.
All right. Well, you wanted to take them one at a time, Tim, or?
Yes, that would be the
Okay.
easiest
All right.
thing.
Commissioner Boucher, you've got something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, what motivated the offset to be put in this? Was it an insurance firm, or where does this come from?
That was back in 2009, when the plan was developed. I know Frederick County is one that has one. We had looked at their plan, and again, this was all pre-me. So I think that's where it came from, because there were a couple jurisdictions that had it, and that's why it was put in there.
Is there
The rationale behind it is to prevent potential abuse of the system. I know Howard County does not have an earned income offset, Frederick County does. So that's where we stand today. And like Commissioner Wentz said, when the sheriff was here last time, he asked you to consider just eliminating that offset completely.
And your point is well taken, potential abuse.
Right.
And the potential abuse is very minimal, you know. The intent of that abuse, I believe, would be very minimal. So getting rid of it and making this much cleaner, I think, is the appropriate way to do. So, I mean, I'd like to make the motion that we make the amendment in getting rid of the offset.
Second.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I got a motion and second to deal with that one. And again, for me, just the final comment, I think if we had a much bigger department, that perhaps then maybe it would be something that we would need to look at, because I know in my previous life, I always remember this story. We had a firefighter be declared disabled because of a back injury, and several months later, he was found throwing boxes up high shelves at Home Depot. So there is that potential that would occur, but I would like to think that because of the size of our department and the way in which it is managed and what have you, that I don't think it's relevant.
I would think self-regulation was
Well,
big into this. I
And
mean,
that's how that happened, Dick, because somebody went, wait a minute, wait, what? And then,
I mean,
So-
abuse abuse of this hurts everybody, so I'm sure everybody that knows the potential of getting hurt
Yeah.
would.
There are mechanisms in place for us to investigate abuse anyway already.
If they're retired on disability, if it's a work-related injury, obviously workers' comp's still involved, so they would be looking into that.
Okay.
That would be through risk
So
management.
there's already something in place to police it, so to speak.
Somewhat, yes.
All right.
All right, I've got a motion and second on that proposed amendment. Any
That
other
just
discussion?
removes it.
To eliminate it.
Right.
That was the motion, correct?
Correct.
Any discussion further? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Okay, so there's that one. One of the other issues, I think, was some sort of grandfathering, which I don't
Future
necessar-
enhancement.
Yeah, which I don't necessarily understand. I would think that if we put this into place, it applies retroactively to those that are on the force. Is that correct, Werner?
Correct. So if a police officer goes out on disability and he's receiving a benefit, according to the percentages that's currently stated in the amendment, either 45% or 35% minimum, depending on the extent of the injury. If and when in the future, the sheriff comes up to the board and asks that those percentages be raised, that officer that's already in pay status for his disability, that he or she also gets the increase to the proposed or, implemented percentage if that happens down the road.
Okay, so that's already there. I mean, that.
No,
No,
that's
it's
what he's
not?
asking
Okay,
for.
Okay, all right.
Oh, that's what he's asking
That,
for.
okay, so
Right.
that's not there. See, I
No.
thought it was.
No.
And the other part of this is, when this goes into effect, it applies to everyone at this point, right?
All
Yes.
correctional officers and law officers, yes.
That are currently employed, yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Or
From the time-
future employed.
From the time of signature, or is there a retroactive piece to this where?
They need to be employed when it's signed into law, so to speak.
okay. So let's get the elephant out of the room. We've got an officer that clearly would be able to have this be an advantage for him.
He needs to be on payroll the day you sign this.
Right.
Is he on payroll?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right, I want to make sure that I don't want anybody left behind
Mm-hmm.
when we make these decisions, nor do I.
It
I
won't
mean,
be retroactive to somebody that's not here.
Right.
So if
yeah.
they've already left,
Yeah, if there was somebody that worked, whatever.
as long as they're
years
still
ago,
here, it
but
applies.
if they're here, it needs to be effective for all.
Right.
Okay.
But then, the other point is, if the pay scale rises to another percentage, those that are on that disability, that pension, will not get the increase, correct? The way it stands right now.
They would get the increase to the benefit percentage, but the average compensation piece of it would remain the same.
Okay. I think I'm getting it. It's just because I know, again, from my experiences with military, there's different retirement plans. And, over years, they've changed, and you kind of fit into wherever you finished, and that was your retirement plan. But then there's also the disability piece. When the veteran, the VA says you are disabled, they make it retroactive to when you left the service, even though you got your disability 6 months later, or the claim came through 6 months later. They will backdate it to when you were leaving the service. That is what's happening,
That's
right?
correct, yes.
Okay, good. I just want to make sure that that's what we're doing. Like you said, not leaving somebody behind.
Yeah, I don't,
So,
yeah,
Okay,
I don't think the intent here is not to leave someone behind.
okay.
Right.
Future. So let me,
So I guess,
maybe I'm not
let me
understanding.
clarify, in the
Okay.
case you're speaking about, officer was injured, we'll say 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Time just goes too fast, and I know it's been way too long getting this done. So this would cover that injury, because he was injured here and he is still here. Hypothetical officer hurt at the same time who left last year would not be covered by this.
Correct. Okay, I got that part, right, okay.
hypothetical officer, if I can ask, because I'm confused.
Okay.
In the future, okay, these are put into place, these percentages, and 5 years from now, somebody's retired on this disability, getting one of these percentages. 5 years from now, the Board of Commissioners changes the percentages and raises them again. Does that person who retired on disability and is receiving disability get those higher percentages?
Yes, that's what the
Oh, you
sheriff's
do?
asking.
Okay,
That's what he's asking, that's not
That's
what.
what's in there right now.
Yeah.
No, right, it's not in there now,
not
but
in there
that's
now.
what.
That's what they're
When we
asking for.
convened last
Right, but-
time, that's what the sheriff is asking you to do.
Got it. And
Okay,
that's a good
so that-
idea.
So I think that needs to be in there.
I have to disagree with that. I
Okay.
think when you retire, the benefits are there when you retire are the ones that you should receive. I'm retired from the school system. If the school system increases benefits for the people that are retired, do I get those as increased benefits? No, I don't. I don't think anyone else who's retired from any position, if you retire now, 5 years or 10 years later, you get additional benefits. You don't get those additional benefits. I don't see why, I don't know, you can convince me, but I don't see why it should be any different.
Are the
Can you
numbers-
put a time frame on that, so it's like a,
Lapse period.
future enhancements for up to 3 years after retirement or something like that? Is that a?
Does anybody else have anything like that?
You made a very good point, Commissioner.
I don't know.
Not that we're aware of, but we would have to go back and look at that specifically.
Can you know, Ed, from your military standpoint, I mean, I'm,
No, retirements are,
but let's be
You're-
clear
you're
now,
under-
this
you're-
is not,
you're-
but this is not retirement.
no, I know, and that's my
But
point.
this is-
This is not retirement.
No, it's not, but it is benefits that
But-
you get when
right.
you stop working.
No, I understand,
start
but,
there.
Okay,
but
so-
with retirement, military, I know, you get the package that when you retired under whatever scheme or program you're under. But you're right, this is not retirement, and we're not talking massive numbers like the military or even the teachers. We're talking a relatively small group of folks. So pragmatically, the way we can take care of, it's the same thing with the military, our men and women in red and blue, I believe we should be doing the best we can and take care of. We're talking small numbers, and it's not gonna break the bank, but I wanna ensure that they know we have their back. And if that's what this is, I mean, it's not, I won't say that big of a deal. It's a big statement with a very small fiscal responsibility associated with it. So I am for,
Future enhancements.
the future enhancements.
I think we've made a big statement with these increases that we have right here.
So
And
do I.
then getting rid of the earned income offset. I think that made a tremendous statement, all what we've done. What I've already said though, is if you stop working today, you get the benefits once it's assigned, whatever. You get these benefits. If they change in 10 years, I'm sorry, I don't agree with that part of it. I think we made a tremendous
What's the fire
increase
department
here. I really think that we have.
I can't give you an answer, Dick. I'm trying to run it through that mindset.
I mean, if you're disabled from there, I just wondered what they do.
See, the problem is, I don't know that the precedence on that has ever been set, because I don't think that there are enhancements that are made on a regular basis throughout the years. That's the problem. I'm not sure that there's an answer to that. Because I know in my previous employment in Baltimore County, the percentage is what it is and has been for quite some time. And they haven't looked at it to get it, okay, well, let's do this a little bit more, let's do this a little bit more. So I can't answer that quick. The percentage down there's been the same as it always has been,
You
so.
know, couple things again, and I can only use my experience with the military. I am a disabled veteran. The VA has me in their system. The VA continues to watch over me to check on my disabilities, whether they're going to increase or actually decrease. So it's an active system. And again, that's one piece of this. The other piece is, and I applaud the teachers a lot, me being one, my dad being one. We are asking folks to be put into harm's way. and our men and women in red, green, and blue are told to do that. So this is to me, an impact statement with a very small fiscal responsibility. I agree, we've come a long ways. I think taking this next step is just a nice and appropriate measure in looking out for those that are willing to put themselves in harm's way, especially with all the garbage that's going on right now in the news, in Anne Arundel County and other places. We gotta figure this out. Recruit, train, and retain, and we're gonna have a tough time recruiting as we continue to see the devastation happening in this country. So,
Does any other jurisdiction offer that, what they're trying to propose here, that if you were in disability now and then 5 years later,
I'm not aware of that. We would have to
Not that I'm aware
research
of.
that.
Because I mean, if other jurisdictions are offering it, I'd be more inclined to look at it. If they're not, I don't know why we're doing it. And I have to, well, I won't even go on there. Okay.
I'd like to make
Well,
a
I-
motion that we make that amendment.
What's that amendment?
You're gonna have to be
More
specific
The- To allow for the increases of someone on disability to have that disability appropriately adjusted or increased as time moves on.
or if changes are made,
Yeah,
maybe, would that be
yeah.
better?
However,
We'll work on the wording.
Yeah,
I
work
think
on
we
the wording,
understand
but-
that you want to
Yeah.
be able to
That's the intent.
grandfather them.
You get-
understand the
If the
intent.
changes are
intent.
made to the
I'll
plan.
second that idea.
Okay.
Right, when changes
Okay.
are made.
And
And I assume you only want to do positive changes. There is a possibility.
no.
Okay,
we
that's a
would know.
question, because there is a
And-
possibility that
Absolutely.
some
You-
future board may reduce benefits for some reason. Would you want to reduce benefits?
Oh, I see what you're saying. No, I don't want to reduce benefits.
God
But-
God
I
bless
just wanna
that
be
board.
clear.
No.
God bless that board, 'cause
Yeah.
that would be.
No, and that-
And I
So
just
don't
wanna be
think that
clear.
would ever happen.
No.
Yeah.
Because if we
But-
say just changes to the plan,
No, in a positive
Right.
manner.
in a
And
more
keep-
enhanced manner.
Keep in mind, let's say a couple of years from now, the board entertains the possibility of raising those percentage benefits. When we ask our actuary for the cost study, the cost analysis, they would then have to also include the officer that's already getting a benefit that's going to move to the higher benefit. That would have to be factored into the overall cost of any future enhancement that's done.
So essentially what you're saying, Werner, is they're gonna do that anyway, not necessarily in order for them to get that benefit, but they do it in order to get the right number.
Well, not the increased
But not
benefit,
the-
no.
So
They're
much-
factored in at what, if they say they're gonna be a $10,000 liability, but now that we've increased benefits, they have to go back and look at everybody. If
Okay.
we grandfather it, then
Right.
they become 15, 20, whatever it is. So
Alright.
they would have to do that for each person individually.
I'd like to find out if any other jurisdiction does this before we vote on it.
Well, again, I'm not so sure that that's as easy as what the question alludes to, because there aren't, other jurisdictions have set their standards. And
Right,
and we're
I understand
trying
that
to
we're-
get to where we think we need to be, and I think we're very close with this based upon the percentages that we are offering.
But I would be pretty sure.
So I'm not so sure that you can.
Well, I would be pretty sure those jurisdictions didn't start at where they are right now.
Well, a lot of them did. A lot of them did because of LEOPS. LEOPS sort of
Well,
set the
that's
tone.
difference.
Yeah,
That's
and as a
different.
matter of fact, there's a bill right now in Annapolis that raises the percentage for LEOPS, which is being opposed by local because it's a huge price tag.
Right.
And I don't know where that money's gonna come from. So, so that's there too, but.
I'm surprised you didn't talk about that this morning.
Yeah, that's a huge one as well. But, so I got a motion and second. I just think again, and I'll refer back to what I did, my argument on the first amendment. And that is, if we had 2,000 officers in Carroll, this would be, okay, I understand you're saying that's not the point, but let me make it,
Go ahead, sorry. I'll say that.
because it's kind of my point.
All right, go ahead.
If we had a huge number of employees, I think it would be substantial, and it could be a huge challenge for us. But because of the numbers that we have here, I don't know that it is. Even if we allow this amendment, I don't see where it would be incredibly impactful that it would break the bank here. I really don't think so. So,
But-
and I think that it's deserving, and I'll go to a little bit of Ed's theme here, it's deserving of those individuals to, out of respect, to let them get whatever that small percentage is. And let's be clear, if we make differences or changes to this, it's not gonna be huge. I mean, we're not gonna be able to afford it. There's this little thing called Kerwin out there. We're not. So even if we do take another stab at enhancing, what are we talking? A couple percentages at best, really?
Well, just keep in mind that the police force overall is relatively small. Like you mentioned, we have, over 200 correctional and law officers. But all it takes is a few disabilities to
Right.
cause an issue. So
Right.
that's
Yeah.
just one
No,
to
and
keep that in mind.
it's a valid point.
Right, but
Warren.
the argument that it's not gonna break the bank is not a reason to pass or deny it. And if you're looking at what we've gone from, the non-catastrophic line of duty disability from zero to 35%.
Well,
That's a tremendous improvement.
Yeah.
Now, who says that the future board or us in the next year or so won't make another drastic change like that, which is a big improvement. And then you're looking at, so the idea that it's not gonna break the bank or we have the money or a small force, I'm sorry, I just don't think it holds water.
And I agree with you. That is not the rationale. And it's not the rationale also of taking care of an individual, although that may have been a catalyst for a large part of this conversation. The rationale is, again, making a very clear statement on our support to those that are willing to put themselves in harm's way. And you're right, we are taking large steps forward, but this ain't a leap. This is calculated, and my recommendation will be to continue to make increases to disability support for our law enforcement and our fire.
Yeah.
So, but I agree, it's not about the number, it's not about the cost, but it's about the impact to a specific service and those that are willing to support us. So
And I
that's-
will say, in today's world, we're relying more and more for good police officers to be out there to protect our citizens. I think we have to recruit good people to come in. They have to know that they can react, that their family's gonna be taken care of, things are gonna be out there if something happens. They don't have time to think through those things, and they have to feel safe. Same as the military, you have to be able to react on a moment's notice. You don't think about all these things. You hope they are taken
We
care
don't
of.
hope, we always think, but that's a different.
Well,
story.
yeah, but I mean,
Got it.
you react quickly on those things. Yeah, hopefully after it's thought through with someone here.
Again, with the-
Yeah, okay. But in that situation, I think we have to set the tone here, that we have a good police force, and we are behind them.
Okay. And I'll admit defeat on my point, because and that's what a good debate's all about. I mean, I get it, and I see that the rationale behind that. So I applaud you guys for making me turn left or right, or, I don't know, which way did I go?
Do not turn left.
Okay, turn right.
Wait, before you vote, I just want to make, because we have to work on the language. I
Right.
just want to make sure that we understand that intent.
Right.
So it sounds like it's the intent of the board, if you vote positively for this, then it would be the intent of the board to have a grandfathering provision in the pension plan that it will allow people who are on disability at the moment, whether it's permanent or
Catastrophic or
Catastrophic, thank you.
non-catastrophic.
to receive any increased or enhanced benefits that come down the pike in the future.
Yes.
The only remaining question I have is, I don't know, and I don't know that we want to necessarily discuss this, because it's maybe somewhat private information, whether or not there are people on disability at the moment, but would you extend that grandfathering to anyone who happens to be on the disability at the moment? Or just going forward from this point forward?
So I think we've clearly said, based on the last amendment,
Right.
current employment,
Correct.
correct? So I would,
If they're already on disability, they've already left.
right,
Right.
I would
If
suggest
they're already on
that
their long-term.
trumps
Right.
your suggestion is.
I just want to be clear,
No,
I'm
no,
not
you're
suggesting
right.
one way or
No,
another.
it's a
It's a
I'm
good
just asking
question,
for
it's just, I
clarity.
think, because of the precedents that we set with the language in the
Correct.
last amendment, on employment currently, I think that kind of, you know, makes
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
So we would make
Or answers that question.
And this
based on
builds
that, sorry, based on that, we would make the grandfathering, forward from the date of this adoption.
If this passes.
If, when and if it passes.
Okay.
I'm curious as to what the impact is on the cost of our insurance program. You know, this has to have an impact upon the cost we pay out for insurance, don't it?
Okay, so we're self-insured, but this is a
Alright.
pension plan. So
Well-
this would be the cost of operating the pension plan,
Right.
Okay.
not any
Yeah, not the-
insurance.
Is-
Right.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, this is a different animal, like,
Yeah.
and even if, when we were talking about retirement, this is different, so.
But there's no type of insurance with the pension, so to speak, because I'm worried about the overall liability on the long term and how this impacts that. Because we're exposing ourselves to more cost.
Well, it's gonna be factored into part of our annual required contribution for the
Okay.
pension, and
So there is a mechanism to address it?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually answered that in all the work leading up to today, those details. So,
It's very conflicting, because I emphasize with Commissioner Frazier's point, but also very much emphasize with law enforcement that they're out there exposed, they have a very hazardous occupation. So it's a tough decision to be made.
all right. Is there any more debate on the current motion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No. I'll abstain from the vote.
Okay. All right, based on that, 3 to 1 to 1, you have your direction. Are there any other additions or amendments that were identified as all of you looked over this? I mean, I've read it forward, backward, sideways. I've met with Werner and Kim and picked their brains over this. And I can't find anything else right now that I think we need to do. But that's just me. I'm only one. So, did anyone else identify any items that they would like to address at this point?
You
So with
still
that-
need to
so with
adopt
that
the
said,
basic
I'd like to make the
changes.
motion that
Okay.
we move with those two additional amendments, that the Board of Commissioners added into this, that the Board of Commissioners approve the amendments to Carroll County Pension Plan incorporated by reference in Code of Public Law and Ordinances of Carroll County, Chapter 35, Personnel Pensions and Retirement, Sections 35 Tech, 60 Tech, 35.61, parentheses, Carroll County Certified Law Officers Pension Plan, close parentheses, and 35.30 Tech, 35.31 Carroll County Pension Plan.
Could you repeat that?
No.
Second. What are we talking about time-wise here?
We just have to get with Mary Claire to have her make the changes.
I'll reach out to her tomorrow.
Yeah.
She's out of the office today, so she'll
Okay.
make the changes to the amendment. And then from there, it's a matter of
Yeah,
getting your.
it shouldn't take long. As soon as she gives us the document, we'll have it up here for your signature.
Really good work.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep. All right, I got a motion and second. Let's make this official. Any additional discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Again, this has been an interesting.
This has been years in the making.
Yeah, it's been a challenge.
An
and-
arduous task.
Yeah,
Yes.
these decisions aren't easy. They aren't. And, I applaud everyone who kind of put their necks out there and made these decisions because it's important. It really is. And, I've been comparing a lot lately about the direction that we're going in with fire and EMS, and the direction that we took several years ago with our law enforcement here in the county. While the two, I think, are a tiny bit similar, emphasis on tiny, they're not, really, at all. And my point is, I think this is something that should have been addressed then. And then we wouldn't have been put through this now. And my point with that is, my second point is, we have got to ensure that we do fire and EMS correctly out of the gate. Not that that was wrong, but we've got to think about all this. So if there's any positive that came out of these things, this sort of sets the stage and reminds us that we have got to get this right. So there's my 10 cents.
Okay.
Add that to the pension. All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda is request approval to proceed to public hearing for our 5-year housing and annual plan for the Department of Citizen Services.
Just a little light.
Okay.
What I've always wanted.
Hi, Judy.
Wow.
Celine, good morning.
Good morning. I'm here today with Danielle Yates, who is our Bureau Chief for Housing and Community Connections, and then Paul Moffett is also here with us. He is our Housing Program Manager. We are coming before you this morning because each year we are required to review our Housing Choice Voucher tenant-based program annual plan that you all have in front of you. We have done that review, and each year we are required to make some recommended adjustments if it is needed to continue to maintain that we're meeting the needs of our community. We have made some recommended adjustments to the annual plan, and we are here then to seek your approval to display the annual plan for 45 days for public comment and review and announce a public hearing prior to April 17th, 2020 to consider approval to submit the FY20 annual plan to HUD. And I'm going to have Danielle speak a little bit more on those details of our recommendations.
Good morning, Commissioners.
morning.
So as Celine noted, our agency is proposing 7 adjustments to our terms and policies that are currently in the administrative plan. We have added 2 additional goals for our Public Housing Authority, as noted in Chapter 1. And we have adopted the pilot program that was initially created in the beginning of the last 5-year plan, which began in 2015. We were required to add a local preference for permanent supportive housing families regarding the mainstream award that we received. And we have adjusted language for 3 items in Chapter 11, as noted in our attachment. Would you have any questions that we can answer for you in regards to those adjustments?
The adjustments that you're making, you're able to quantify them and they're measured. So each adjustment you can establish when you meet success of those adjustments?
Yeah. And basically with the 3 adjustments we've done, it's kind of shoring up language.
Right,
And just
okay.
clearly more identifying.
Okay.
So yes, absolutely.
Okay.
All right, any questions on those?
We get most support from the Baltimore VA Medical Center, but we also have folks going into West Virginia, Marshburg. Is it a possibility to tap into other VA centers, or is this US VA just happens to funnel through Baltimore?
It happens the way that it has to go through the Baltimore VA, and
Okay.
referrals are received through there. That's how it was awarded.
And that's specific to the HUD VASH vouchers that you're referring to.
Right. So what you're asking for us is to approve it to go out to 45 days.
Correct.
All right, any other things that you want to, any other changes or additions that you want to highlight before we move forward? I mean,
These are, as Celine had said, annually we review our administrative plan, and we make
Okay.
adjustments to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community.
Okay.
And these were the adjustments that we have identified
so-
throughout this past year.
All right, and keep in mind that we don't have to do this real quick here today. We've got 45 days
45
now
days, correct.
to review this. It's your suggestion then that we go to public hearing, which we always do with this, and then we'll be able to make adjustments accordingly, so.
But, right, but your request is that we allow for that 45-day window to start today?
Correct.
Okay.
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 So I'll move that the Board of Commissioners approve the display of the annual plan for 45 days for public review and comment. Also announce a public hearing prior to April 17th, 2020 to consider approval to submit the FY '20 annual plan to HUD. Correct?
Correct.
Second.
Okay, and if, as we are reviewing this in the next 45 days, which I typically do, it's great reading at night.
Yes.
All of these things. I mean, it's the same with the pension. I studied that thing for,
Yes.
it's just it's what we do in this job. So,
Absolutely.
if we find something that we have a question on or want to,
Contact us immediately, and we can definitely discuss anything and
Okay.
give information regarding why the changes are being made.
okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
This plan really is the administrative manual for how we run our
To
housing
administer
choice
the program.
program,
Okay,
and all the different pieces of that program.
okay. All right, any other questions before we vote on this one? All right, all those in favor? Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was relatively
you.
easy.
Easy button.
Thank you, guys.
You're welcome.
Now, the fun of our annual county transportation priority letter.
Yeah, as they're walking up, we had a planning session, Planning and Zoning Commission last night, for a couple hours, and we had a wonderful dialogue specifically on this plan. Cody, you did a great job, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. And, you know, they're gonna go through the letter. There's a lot to be done, but what I just wanna share with you is that the commission last night really showed a lot of appreciation to what's going on and is looking to really dive into this, so, just more eyes and ears to how we're gonna take care of our community and transportation needs.
It's a big issue in your district as well. You're faced with some challenges.
Well, it is, but, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that, but it's very diverse in this county, and that's what I was trying to highlight last night, was South County is very different than what's happening up in the north, and there may be other transportation needs, and we want to ensure that the effort being done is looking at the entirety of the county, from down there through Westminster, all the way up north and east and west, so, anyway.
All right, good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
So I'm here with Mary Lane, our planning manager. Just to briefly introduce you to, we come to you every year with the annual priority letter. We'd like to try to get this done during the legislative session so that we can get our delegation signatures on this letter. This letter is then submitted to Maryland Department of Transportation for their consideration for inclusion in the Consolidated Transportation Program for the state of Maryland. So again, this letter is for the top state transportation priorities in the county that include county highways and roads as well as county trails. So we do work with our other departments in the county, Public Works and Recreation and Parks, to put forward projects as well as the towns that they feel should be included in this top list of priorities for the county. Again, we start work in January with our Public Works, Economic Development, Rec and Parks. We meet among the Planning Department, county municipal agencies in February, and we're working on doing that currently to see what the other priorities are that we are unaware of. And then we like to submit this letter in April to the state. Then this follows with the county transportation tour that you all attend in the fall of every year. And then this goes to the legislature for approval. So the three projects that we've been putting forward over the last several years are major highway capacity enhancement projects for Maryland 32 from the county line to south of Maryland 26. Maryland 97 from Bachman's Valley Road to Maryland 140 in Westminster. And then Maryland 26 from Liberty Reservoir to Maryland 32. We have had various breakout projects come forward with these state highway projects. Again, Maryland 32 complete dualizations from 26 to the Howard County line is a huge project. There's a lot of expense involved with that. So one of the things that we have been working on over the years is prioritizing segments within those larger projects to get the ball rolling, to have something move forward. One of the projects that went forward because of the Maryland National Guard Readiness Center is that dualization from Freedom Avenue down through 32. And this project is on schedule with an estimated completion of this fall. I believe that'll be before the Readiness Center opens. And then this is the full extent of the project that's been in development for 32, but we know that that part's not going to completely occur, so they're working on the part in front of the Readiness Center, which is right about here currently.
How long is that area?
Do we have the segment?
It's about a mile
Point,
from Main Street to that.
little less, I believe. Just shy.
Just curious.
And that project was very detailed. I mean, there had to be relocation of fiber and
Sure.
things like that underneath. So we had a lot of coordination with Public Works, our IT department, as well as the state to coordinate that segment of the project.
I do not.
Well, so it'd be about a mile out of the, what is the
Yes, correct.
entire length of what we'd like to see done eventually?
Yes.
About 10 miles.
Yeah.
Okay, all right.
And it's been segments, along Springfield Avenue, near, where not Raincliffe,
Right, Warfield.
yeah, come in. They've done the dualization there and the upgrades to the intersection years ago, so. Some other improvements that they've had, also suggestion, are some curb cuts for site distance improvement and things like that. So there's systematic improvements that came out of that planning and environmental linkages study that we've put forward annually to say, hey, let's keep chipping away at least on making safety improvements, if dualization can't occur, for a while. The next stretch is Maryland 97, Bachman's Valley Road to 140. The Phase 1 Breakout Project, which was the .64 miles of improvement on Maryland 97 from the airport in Magna Way just north of Pleasant Valley. This project is substantially complete. This was a really great collaboration between our county public works, the county funding, and also working with State Highway Administration to get that project done for economic development purposes along this segment. We have initiated a feasibility study from Magna Way to 140. We put that forward in last year's priority letter. We're not sure where the state stands with that to move forward, but that's something we'll keep pressing on to have at least that segment complete. Again, this is the entire segment that we've put forward. This is the part that's being worked on, and so we want to try to get this segment complete.
We
The
don't have
next-
anything in the letter about going, if you go back to that, about going from the bubble, I guess, north.
I think the priority for right now, and if you would like to see that change, but it's getting people off of 140 up
Right,
to this
except,
section.
right, except when they bottleneck it, where it comes together.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm just saying that if we could just add that to the letter, looking at from north of what has already been completed up to, was it Bachman Valley Road? Because I think, and I also have to say that what they've completed has really cut down on the amount of traffic on that. I'm amazed at how much better it is. I really am.
then we'll
That
add that
doesn't
as
mean we want to
another
stop.
breakout.
We still want to move forward, right?
Absolutely. So we'll add that then as another breakout project for that
And
segment.
then a significant breakout also is by Charles Carroll Community Center.
So that's out of this scope, so that's further north than,
On 97, just
yes,
out of this.
correct,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
Ideally, it would be nice to go to the Pennsylvania line. I think, that will
Okay.
be,
Oh, yeah, that's ideal.
We did include that in last year's priority letter.
yes, and we did, okay, we did
Yeah.
include that as a
Just an
breakout
off-ramp.
project just for the whole 95 segment. We'll continue to acknowledge that moving forward.
Yeah, I only laugh because we'll never see that, but it's, of course, I guess somebody said
A lot of
that.
things we'll never see, but we gotta keep asking
Somebody
for.
probably said that when it was just a wagon trail back in 1910
And look how
or
far we've come,
something.
it's paved now.
Yeah,
And the stripes, so,
So we're making progress.
correct, we're making progress.
100 years of progress, boom, okay. Now, I concur with what you're saying, Dennis, because you're right. Man, I turn out Pleasant Valley Road now, and I don't wait.
It is, it's
It's-
amazing.
it's
the
crazy.
change. It really is.
But it needs to be that whole entire section instead of just this, and then we're gonna do this. I mean, it's sort of like the mindset of when you got everybody there with the trucks and the bulldozers,
Yeah.
let's just do it. Although it's not as easy as that, but they're there,
That would be
let's
nice,
just do it.
and that's true, I mean, it's more
Yeah,
cost
it's
effective,
easy.
once you get everyone out there, then the cost per mile does decrease, but, again, we're gonna keep working with the state to move forward projects, we've been successful over the last several years, just getting recognition, getting on their radar, and moving these projects forward inch by inch.
It's just good to have it in the letter.
Yeah,
And I know
absolutely
you know that, but
reaffirms.
because when money gets tight, nothing new is gonna be added. So if they're looking at something now that might go into their book, nothing new is gonna be added after a while, and things are gonna get tight with this current thing or whatever it is. With the stuff that's coming up, so get it in the letter now, so it's on the radar.
Let me ask you a question, the other end of 140, the reservoir to Clees Mill Road, is that on the radar in the future? That is those intersections are getting dangerous, a lot of accidents in those areas.
You mean Liberty Road?
No, this is from to Finksburg.
Yes, so that was a long, long time ago, part of this overall project. We still do acknowledge that that stretch of Maryland 140 has issues. As we move forward with the transportation master plan, hopefully, which is another separate project from this, we can continue to look at those issues. I know that Maryland 91 at 140 is, State Highway is looking at some safety improvements at that intersection currently.
It's getting terrible number of accidents and deadly accidents in those areas.
Yes.
And again, that goes into that, see something, say something, report them, because State Highway will not be making adjustments unless they really see an objective need, which means the number of reporting and number of.
And we have to reinforce that.
Yep.
Yeah,
So-
that's a valid point.
No, I understood. I mean, I drive that section every day, and I'm very aware of the congestion and one accident, how it stops up traffic in both directions and is problematic. So
I would suggest that statistics will tell you that that's more relevant than this one.
that is for your discussion. If you feel that these priorities should change, then
And we've done that in the past,
Yeah.
you, especially Dennis and Dick, you remember us sitting here not arguing, but discussing about our priorities, and it's interesting because you talk about the state highway and, see something, say something, well, that's fine to do, but their answer is, we'll look at the statistics.
Right.
Everything is statistically driven
Right.
with the decisions that they make, so you can see and say all you want, but they'll go to the statistics and say,
Yes.
yep, nope, not gonna happen.
No, but that's.
But
my
I
point.
think, in this case, this could be open for discussion, because I understand that we set the priorities and work gets done based on the priorities that we've set. But I'd love to see the statistics of the accidents and the incidents that occur from 26 to Liberty versus 91 to the county line.
The reservoir to
Yeah.
Clees Mill,
Right.
basically.
Because I bet you they far outweigh this.
and that is something that we can definitely look at, and that's something we are looking at with the transportation master plan. But that's what this letter is for. What are the priorities moving forward? Maryland 26, we've done a lot of studies on Maryland 26. We're still waiting for the redesign of sorts with Maryland 26 with a practical design approach. It's still within the Secretary's Office of MDOT, so that has not been shared with us currently. We did express to them the need and desire to have that sooner rather than later, because we would like to know where that project stands to bring forward to you all. We have not received those developments for that particular study and what they're recommending, as well as just moving forward with our transportation master plan. That data and analysis that they have done would be very valuable to us. So we keep pressing them to get us that information.
I may take you up on that bet. I'm not sure, but on that stretch, I may take
Which
you up
one's
on
more
that.
dangerous?
The 140 and the 26, but I want to be clear, that see something, say something, it's reporting it. Saying means reporting it to get it into those statistics, because that's the biggest hurdle I've been having with State Highway, when I say, here's the problem, and they say, well, here's the statistics, and it's not showing the amount of that. I said, there are, because I'm seeing them, and they're not being reported. So that's what that's all about. But I do agree at one point, now, you're talking 140 east of 91, or are you talking 140 like by the library?
Actually, no, not that far up. The reservoir at the county line.
Okay,
Up to Cleves Mill, which is not quite to Bristow
okay,
County,
got it.
that
Okay.
area. And it's very, it's a heavily traveled intersection. It's got a lot of issues.
No, I
We've been
agree.
dealing with it for several years.
Yes.
and,
It's got a big hill.
You know, that, we're trying to
And
look
high
at the
speeds.
most important areas in the county, and that is one that just keeps popping up every day, more
Yeah.
than more.
No, I
every
agree,
year.
it's, I feel like it's these big hills, you know, it's the same thing, 26 going eastbound
Same thing.
towards Johnsville, you
downhill.
start hitting that hill, and people just pick up that speed, and they're going from 50 to 70 like that, and that's the issues, so.
Well, if
Okay.
you would like to add an additional project or change, I'm not saying 3 is the magic number. It seems to work well. We used to have a laundry list of all the projects, and it was like a list of 12. When we get, there's a lot of need. Again, funding is limited from everyone, so putting projects forward, we really just tried to focus on, what were the top 3 projects, and I'm not saying that this is a number 4. I think sometimes things change annually depending on what's been developed, driving habits, where people are commuting from. I think that's why this transportation master plan, when it's complete, will help us along with understanding. But if you'd like to, we can try to come back with some safety numbers and see what has higher crash rates. I can see if we can get that data. Unfortunately, that data is kind of challenging to come by and come by readily, but we can see what we can do to help in your decision-making, to see if you want to add that as a 4th or reprioritize the 3 that are here.
Commissioner Wance, would it be appropriate to do something about the Medford Road 31, request a light or flashing light or something? You know more about this intersection than I do over the years.
So that would come out of safety money, not necessarily in capacity enhancing money. And that actually may be the same thing that does happen with 140. I think maybe the capacity's there because it is 2 lanes in each direction. So maybe it's just us alerting them to safety enhancements along 140. So I think it's going to be,
I agree. I think you've got a valid point, and I think it would be similar to what we did at
Gillis.
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 Yeah,
Gillis
which
Falls
is in my
Road.
district as well.
Yeah.
Because we,
And
you know, we
27.
pushed and pushed and
Yep.
pushed, and did show the statistics. And you wanna talk about statistics at that intersection, they'll blow
Wow.
your mind.
I used to avoid it on my motorcycle.
Sure.
And so maybe that's I think he's got a valid point. I think you need to add that, or do, whatever that is, and however, maybe that's out of the cycle here. Maybe we should make that a priority.
I think it's something you will want to address in this letter. And I think this letter is, really the main purpose for years has been capacity enhancement. What do we do to adding big projects to Carroll County state roads to allow more volume to come through in a comfortable manner?
Right.
So I think the 2 things are, do you want more volume, capacity, or do you want to enhance safety? And sometimes the 2 go hand in hand, and sometimes they're exclusive from one another. So if the idea for this particular intersection is safety, we could add a safety section, saying please pay particular attention to, as well as, the state and the county are both working jointly on a state highway safety plan. I'm not quite sure where that is in the process. I think Chris has been really working on it quite robustly over the years with the sheriff's department to come up with different techniques to get to that 0 death along our Maryland roads. So
Right.
So let's add that.
So roads engineer and.
Yeah, I would suggest that you take
that's
that.
engineering and enforcement and things like that.
Take that ball and run with it, and check with Chris and the folks downstairs
And
that
engineer.
that did a similar thing at Gillis Falls, because we were able to get that project done out of cycle, and we suggested some safety enhancements at Gillis before we got the light that I think helped as well. I mean, even maybe a blinking or something
Yeah.
there would be,
Yeah.
or I don't know, great big arrows that say, hey.
Stop here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, you
sometimes the
guys
state
have
doesn't know
experience
till
with
we tell
Willis
them.
Falls.
Yeah, so yes, let's add that to the letter.
Okay,
But,
okay.
I'll
I'd say,
push it.
Eric, do your work on that,
All right.
and then see what we can do, because, again, the statistics will, they will.
Yeah, the night of that accident, I immediately had a constituent contact me, had traveled past that incident, and stated that she is aware of 6 people over her lifetime have died at that intersection.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So, yeah, so
Thank you.
let's do that,
You're
and then
welcome.
you do your homework, and we'll roll from there. Okay.
Absolutely. And again, here's the same, the
Right.
stretch I just described in the prior slide.
So if we were to add a 4th project here, would you suggest that we do that at this point, to this letter? Or is that something that's gonna make you go, I don't know?
Well, it's been added before, so we have a lot of detailed information. You know, that stretch of 140 has always been a project in the highway needs inventory. So I think we have some good information that we can bring forward, for description of what that project scope and extent would be.
Commissioner Weaver, you wanna make that number 4?
I would like to get it there, just so they're gonna see it as we move ahead and some of the others drop off. I think that one needs to move up, and we need to,
So I think one of the things we need to understand is, I don't believe what you're asking for is another lane. What had been asked for in the past is really having a median for safety, so you don't have that
Right.
high-speed, crazy turn lane in the middle, and some other major safety enhancements along that stretch, I believe is what you would be asking for.
Agreed. Would you agree?
I agree there, that's a lot of the issue, and then the 191 and 140 intersection is just disastrous times.
And that is something that they have a concept they're working on for that, what they're calling a jug handle design, which is very common in New Jersey to help improve the flow. With that, well, I think at one point it was a continual flow intersection interchange. I think that may not occur, given how those have to be constructed, but
Say, build a bridge, overpass is a
yes,
lovely thing.
exactly.
Right over.
Yeah, and then having, so you would not even have that. I mean, that's a crazy intersection. You had to go through the shopping center to make a left on 91 and,
Yeah, it's kinda goofy.
yeah, so that's something that State Highway even recognizes that needs to be done, and we're gonna reaffirm and push that,
All right,
but
well
as
then,
well as some other
You wanna
safety.
make that number 4,
Yes,
Commissioner
please
Weaver?
do.
Everybody agree with that one?
Safety,
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
safety
Yep, number 4.
Okay, absolutely.
All right.
And again, we always put forward our municipal, urban reconstruction. We're working on trying to get some updated data, on this. We know that New Windsor, really wants to see something happen with Maryland 31. So again, we reaffirm that in this letter. Again, same with Maryland 851 and Sykesville. The county's really been working with the town to try to work on drainage issues, water and sewer line issues, because that is something that's under the county's purview since it's our system. So again, we're gonna continue to put those projects forward. This, for New Windsor, would include improvements to sidewalks, enhancements to bicycle pedestrian accessibility, as well as roadway improvements, and for them to coordinate the replacement of water lines, that would have a positive impact on the town. So again, we're continuing to work with the town on this scope. Again, here is the limits of the proposed project through their Main Street and downtown area. And then again, with Sykesville, the concept for Maryland 851 has been complete, but it's currently not funded for design. So, the key is to get them to that design component, for the actual streetscape project, not the underground work that's happening. And again, here is the extent for that. So again, that's it with the priority letter with the main projects that we have. We'll work on making those adjustments as suggested. Do you have anything else for us?
My comments early on, I got ahead of myself from the priority letter. What was discussed last night was a study being done that's funded through the BMC.
It's our countywide transportation master plan, and we are
Right.
using federal funding to help.
But isn't it pushed through the BMC?
Yes, it's through the
The
Unified
contract,
Planning Work
right.
Program, yeah, and we have used them to contract out with a consultant for
Right,
us.
so it highlights partnership that we have with the BMC, and our involvement and engagement with the BMC. And, it will segue right into this priority letter.
Correct.
So that's what was discussed at the planning, commission last night, so.
Yes, we're in the very early stages of that.
For this letter, would we include, and probably not since it's not in here, additional buses for our
Yes.
transportation?
Yes.
We do.
Yes?
Yes,
So
but
can
that's not the focus, so we only bring the main focus, but
Okay.
yes, we work with, our
I
transit.
wanna make sure that's in there because we need
Absolutely,
additional
always.
buses.
So that also comes out of the CTP, the Consolidated Transportation
Right,
Program, that
right.
we always have our buses highlighted, and those do get funded, through this program as well.
I appreciate the initiatives on the Main Street, both New Windsor and Sykesville, because the main streets are so vitally important to our economic development. And when I was campaigning and doing door-to-door in New Windsor, the sidewalks were all uneven, tripping over them. I had citizens along the side of Main Street talking about how the water would flood down the road into their yards. So this is long overdue, and those people will be sincerely grateful when this takes place. Thanks for what you're doing.
Absolutely, we're trying our best. Wish I could make money up here, but,
All right, anything else?
yeah, that'd be better.
All right.
Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Have a
Add,
good day.
add number 4 and we're
Yep.
off and running. All right, we're renovating the permit and inspection office, and I guess we're gonna have to give those guys and gals something to sit on, huh? Justin, good morning.
We got boxes.
And Maureen from purchasing.
Good morning, Commissioners. Yes, we are asking for your approval. We're recommending of the award for purchase and installation of new furniture for the Carroll County Permits and Inspection Office from Duran in the amount of $41,821.60. And Duran was awarded a competitively solicited contract, which is part of, it's called MAP, which is part of the Baltimore Metro Council and Washington Metro. And the money is within the budget limit.
Thought Duron made paints, Justin.
They do
Spelled
too.
differently.
Spelled
Yeah.
differently though.
Oh,
Right.
okay.
So, currently there's 24 employees, in the permits area. So all these furnishings, it's gonna be from tables to desks to chairs, completely retrofit this whole area. So when permits move back into the building, obviously the next day they can hit the ground running and get back in there, and everything will be furnished for them.
They're moving on up,
They're moving on up.
like the Jeffersons.
That's it.
Once every 50 years, we renovate the area.
What's the status of the project? while we
Status
got
is
you
looking
here?
good. Like I say, we're on target for April completion. Peeked my head in there today. We got walls being built, we got ductwork installed, HVAC's going in. Obviously, it's right on target. Contractor's working very well, quickly, moving very, very well. I'm pleased with it.
I appreciate the fact that staff has been so accommodating to make the move to New Windsor, not skip a beat. I know it's difficult. We've all moved our homes before, and it's been arduous and stressful.
Absolutely.
And they haven't skipped a beat at all with servicing constituents, so
Yep.
thank you to our staff.
And
$41,000 is a lot of money, for furniture. And I just wanna make sure we're not purchasing gold-plated screwdrivers and hammers. Understand that this is a competitive bid, and, are we getting the most for our money? What's your confidence level in this?
Yeah, absolutely. Doron is it's a well-known name manufacturer. We're not going with the high-end furniture, Commissioner. We're going with the mid-grade.
Okay.
Now, permits 24 people. There's a lot of furnishings that we gotta
Right.
get in that building. Drafting tables,
Right.
workstations. I feel comfortable with the price. We had several meetings with Doron. They have gave us some brochures and literature of their quality. They install, they warranty it. Any problems, we call Doron, and they're out the next day, whether replacing it or fixing it right on the spot.
Getting your confidence level
Yep.
is what I needed, so
Yep,
thank you.
yep. So we, like I
If
say,
I can just interject something with Duran, they were awarded this contract, and with Han is what we normally buy. And just to let you know that they're giving us a 56% discount
Okay.
off of that price. So that 41,000, had we not had that discount, would be more than double.
Wow, okay,
Yes.
thank you.
And having toured that department, I'm well aware that there's specialty furniture that they require, having all those massive prints and how to review
Absolutely.
them. So it's not just standard desks and chairs.
With that, I move that the Board of Commissioners award the purchase to Duran Incorporated in the amount of $41,821.60 for new furniture for the Carroll County Permits and Inspection Office.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
all right, thanks,
Well done.
Commissioners.
Thank you very much.
Gillis Falls Stream Restoration. Our Bureau Chief. Hey.
Morning.
Chief
morning.
Hine, how are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
And Kelly's here as well, Art. Good morning.
Good morning. So we are requesting your approval to submit an application to the Department of Natural Resources, Chesapeake and Coastal Grants Gateway for $200,000 to fund the Gillis Falls Stream Reforestation Project. This project proposes 25 acres of streamside plantings on county-owned property in the area of the proposed Gillis Falls Reservoir. These plantings will establish a riparian buffer along the stream, which will address the requirements of the county's National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System permit. The Bureau of Facilities manages this property right now. They are aware of this and support this request. In addition to the $200,000 of the grant request, there is a $50,000 match for a $250,000 total project cost. Do you have any questions?
Is this currently in the budget, the $50,000, or because we're acting for the grant right now, it'll probably be in next year's budget? Which one?
So we have in the current budget the $200,000 for the planting, which we are then asking for the grant to cover.
Okay.
The $50,000 is the anticipated maintenance over the next 10 years. So that would be, so that is not in capital, that would be in operating moving forward over the next 10 years.
Mr. Hine, first of all, I want to thank you for taking me on the tour out there in the creek bottom, hiking down, getting your boots dirty. During that tour, you explained to me the credit program that we receive. Can you discuss and elaborate for the board how that works for us and how beneficial this is, and the cost value we get off of it as well?
Yes, absolutely. So our NPDS program that we have with, our NPDS permit, which we have with MDE, MDE sets requirements for a certain amount of impervious area that we need to treat. And impervious area being roads and buildings and so on. And the standard way of treating the impervious area is with stormwater management facilities. And so when we build ponds and so on. So that's the normal way of doing that. MDE, though, recognizes that there are other practices that improve water quality, and they want to give us credit and incentivize us to do those practices. One of those would be tree plantings. And so when we plant an acre of trees, MDE gives us credit for treatment of 1 acre of impervious towards our permit. If that acreage is adjacent to a stream, they actually give us bonus credit. So they give us, it's like 1.41 acres of impervious area credit. So these 25 acres, if we plant them, we will actually get credit for 31 acres of impervious area towards our permit. Now, if you compare that to a stormwater management facility, we typically look around $30,000 an impervious acre for treatment, for constructing a stormwater facility. So if you take that 31 acres and apply that $30,000 per impervious acre, that would be the equivalent of about $1 million structural practice. So by spending this $250,000 for those 31 acres of credit, there's a significant savings. And then you put on top of that, we're asking for grant money to cover $200,000 of that.
This
So-
entire 25 acres will be covered with trees?
Yes.
And what's on it now?
It's currently open field, and it's floodplain, and it's in between forested areas, the areas that are currently forested. I believe that there is some discussion of walking trails that I talked with Jeff Degetz concerning. We're working out as to whether the walking trails that he is looking at doing would be through this area, but that is easily accommodated as far as putting a trail through our planting areas.
This is county ground?
Yes, it is.
County ground.
The credit ratio you just expressed is tremendous. I'm glad you're involved in it. Also, Commissioner Weaver expressed to me a week before about the types of trees that are planted in the county, and he has concern about invasive species and all. What type of trees will be planted and for what reason?
So, I'm an engineer, I don't do trees,
Okay.
so I can't tell you specifically what the trees are, but we do have staff that are working up a planting plan, and I can certainly provide that.
Okay, so there's a science to it, and they calculate
Absolutely,
what. all right.
absolutely. We look at the soils that are there, we look at whether they'll be inundated during storms, because it's adjacent to the stream, and they're all native plants, absolutely.
I'm just saying there may be a quick sale on some invasive bamboo if you want.
No.
Yeah, that's why I was laughing, sorry. It would grow quick.
They're much cheaper.
It's good cover.
I'll make the motion, the Board of Commissioners approve the submittal of the grant application and acceptance of the award to the Department of Natural Resources Chesapeake and Coastal Grants Gateway.
Second.
All right, got a motion and second.
Aye.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Thank
no
you.
bamboo.
No
Thank you.
bamboo.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Very good, thank you.
Good job.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde.
Recreational Trails Program application, Mr. Daggett.
And we don't float on these trails?
No, ideally, we don't.
Unless
If
there's
you
a
do, you
heavy
may have your
rain.
reservoir sooner. Good morning, Commissioners. This apparently is the Gillis Falls Day. All right, here this morning to request permission to apply for a grant through the Recreational Trails Program. The trail would be located in the Gillis Falls area. There's currently a mixture of equestrian trails and some single-track mountain bike trails through the area. What we're actually requesting now is in the capital budget. It's planned for FY '21. So there's $467,000 that's in the budget for this trail project, and it's a mixture of impact fees and program open space fees. As with many projects, there's an interesting story behind this one. This was actually initiated in the early 2000s. A lot of design work was done. In fact, a preliminary plan was put together back in 2005, started going through the development review process, and is very close to a finished plan. What we're looking at is we have this opportunity with the Recreational Trails Grant to utilize some of those funds, saving our POS money for other projects. The grant does require a 20% match. We have a couple of bridges that we know are going to be needed in that area, either bridges or box culverts. As we learned with Bennett Surf Park, that tends to get very expensive. Ideally, we still complete the project within the $467,000, but are using grant funds instead of some of the POS. If it ends up costing more than that, by getting this grant, that would give us some flexibility to keep the project moving forward.
What's the green area on the map?
The green area is county-owned property that was purchased for the reservoir location. I should note that this project has two phases to it. The phase that currently has funding in the CIP starts at the bottom of the page near the Carroll County Equestrian Center, and it would connect from Grimville Road up to Saltbox Park, which is on Gillis Falls Road. That is the only section that we are requesting funding for at this time. That's also the only section that is currently in the CIP. The second phase would run from Gillis Falls Road north up to Gillis Road, and that's a little bit longer. The second phase is about 1.5 miles. The first phase is about 1.25 miles. And it's some beautiful scenery through there. We're focusing on a north-south spine to this trail network. This will be a 10-foot wide trail. Stone dust surface. You'd have people on bicycles, hiking, equestrians, and then it will help get to some of those side trails, which may be single-track biking trails or equestrian trails. And I have been meeting with both representatives of the hiking, biking, and equestrian communities to get their feedback on this as well.
Will trailheads be at the Salt Box Park?
There would be trailheads at both Saltbox Park and down near the Equestrian Center. It's just down the hill a little bit from the Equestrian Center.
Okay.
Now, this is county-owned ground that was purchased for the reservoir.
That's correct.
What happens if we proceed with the reservoir sometime down the road?
And that's an excellent question.
You
There's a
scuba
reservoir
walk.
built here. I don't believe it's going to happen in my lifetime. I had that question the other night at a meeting that I attended, but it's certainly not going to happen within 20 years. I mean, if we started today, if we get 20 years of usage out of this, that would satisfy any requirements for the grant, for POS, and, there would be no hazard, excuse me, with having natural surface trail at the bottom of a reservoir, if it's ever built. But I don't see it happening.
Okay.
This is close to my house, and I've hiked back through those woods a lot. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's nice to see that you don't link Grimsville Road all the way up to Gillis Road. let Mr. Brad Rogers know if he needs any help welding the walkway bridges in this park. I'll be more than happy to volunteer my service.
You know a good welder.
Yes, it's debatable. Looks like you don't need a lot of walkway bridges. You know, I see it crossing a lot of the streams.
Right, we're hoping that we can do one bridge and I think one box culvert and hopefully not need a second bridge, because the bridges, as I mentioned, do get expensive. But it really is some beautiful area back through there. And also, just to piggyback a little bit on what Chris was just talking about with the tree planting in the area, Chris did provide me with a map with where they're looking to plant the trees, so we will coordinate this. That would all be in the Phase 2 section, so it wouldn't impact this initial effort, but we want to make sure that we are talking and in communication so the projects don't conflict.
So I had to move the trees with the trail and later.
That's right.
Will you need volunteers to help with this?
We've had volunteers who have helped with trail maintenance in the area. With the construction, we would likely have a contractor come in to do that, because I think just to make sure we get everything in compliance with the drawings and the permits, particularly in and around the bridges, it gets complicated sometimes.
Gotcha. Well, I must say that volunteering to help out your department is very satisfying, to be out in the woods for the day and help out. So I highly encourage people out there, if you want to help out, volunteer to help your department out.
Thank you. We've had good success with that in the past.
Jeff, with these projects, do we include, as they are presented, or introduced, the surrounding neighborhoods? And I'll tell you why I'm asking the question. You know, we made a big to-do about the canoeing or the whatever y'all do up there on the Monocacy. But the traffic impact was something that a few of the neighborhood folks reached out to me on. And it's a legitimate question if you live beside those areas.
Right.
Do you indeed include those that would be affected by projects such as this? Because I have a sense that that wasn't done in the northern part in my district.
With this particular project, the process actually did occur a number of years ago. It was pretty extensive. Obviously, a lot of time has gone by. Residents have changed. People have moved out, moved in. So we will include that as a part of this. However, we're not at the stage right now that we know the exact location of the trail. We're actually meeting with the design firm that was involved with the initial design, and they need to check to see what has changed in terms of regulations. What do we need to do with the planning commission? It got as far as concept review previously, and also are there any site conditions that have changed during that period? So once we've completed that, and our goal is to do that between now and July, we'll know where the trail is, and then we'll put the invite out for a public meeting to let people know exactly what we're doing. And the trail to some degree exists now. This would open it up to a larger audience, which then, as you said, you know, impacts traffic, impacts usage.
Yeah, and in some of these areas, especially the things that we decided upon several weeks ago, you know, traffic's a big impact when you're talking about a road that is not necessarily built to utilize those, or to have the traffic on it. So I got some feedback from some folks up there. Not that they were angry, but they just felt as if they were left out of the loop, because again, the roads up there are sometimes you can't get two cars past, and now you're talking about
particularly
people.
if you're talking farm equipment as well.
Yeah,
when
so
you're coming through some of those rural areas.
And I'm not suggesting that there was a mistake made. I'm only suggesting that in the future that we need to really make an emphasis that we include the neighborhoods in these decisions that are made. If I would have known the feedback prior to that decision, I may have delayed that a bit.
Yeah, I agree. We need to make sure everybody involved here is reached out to and they understand the implications to them. And also, we rent a lot of that property out, don't we?
Not in the area where the trail goes through
Okay.
now. Some of the open fields in the vicinity, and particularly north of Gillis Falls Road, have been rented in the past.
I mean, this can have an impact on the people who do that. I mean, if you have walking trails and people leave the trail and go up through the hills or somewhere else, it may have an impact on the citizens in that area.
We love our
Your citizens.
we love our open space and the recreational activities, but we also need to be mindful and respectful of those that live near these areas.
Agreed.
And I'm a little bit concerned about the decisions that were made in reference to the northern part several weeks ago. And I think Commissioner Weaver, you as well as I got some phone calls. So let's just make an emphasis to make sure that everyone's included in the future.
Definitely.
Well, with that, I move that the Board of County Commissioners approve the submittal of a recreational trails program grant application to Maryland Department of Natural Resources to support the Gillis Falls Trail Capital Project, and if awarded, the acceptance of this grant.
Second.
All right, any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Fee setting philosophy. Mr. Zaleski.
Your fee guru.
Okay, sometime in the not-too-distant future, you're going to be hearing a series of presentations from departments about fees we have in place or possibly fees that they think should be in place. This presentation today is just to set up those future conversations, give you a few things to think about before you're faced with the actual fees. I'm not here today to make any particular arguments about what you should or should not do, just to make some arguments about how to think about those decisions as they come up. Now, sometimes fees and taxes will come up and you'll hear some version of this. You know, I don't care what you call it, it's still a tax. And I understand the underlying sentiment. You're taking money from somebody and giving it to government, and you know, I get that. And there are cases where things called fees, I would agree, are not fees at all, but are a tax. The state's Bay Restoration Fee is a good example. And as I go through how I'm distinguishing them, I think you'll be easy to see why I would say, yeah, I agree, that's a tax. But there are important distinctions between fees and taxes, and I'm going to try and lay out for you why I say that. First, taxes. Taxes benefit the general public, not a specific user. You're collecting taxes, it's to serve the entire county, not that person or that group. Taxes provide for general services. We're talking about schools, police, fire. Any one person in Carroll County might go their entire life without ever calling for a police, but the police are there if they need to call. Taxes are providing those kinds of services. Taxes are mandatory. I mean, there's not really any choice. When the property tax bill comes, you have to pay it. When April rolls around, you have to file your income taxes. And you can choose to tax at whatever level you want. Now, sometimes there are limitations on that. The state won't allow you to set your income tax rate at more than 3.2%. That's a decision that they made. But in general, taxes are up to you. So with taxes, we can't look at a dollar that came in and tie it to what we're doing with that dollar. The money is coming into a pot, you're doing lots of things with that money. Fees. Now, fees benefit a specific user, not the general population. And we can point to all kinds of things, but this could be a specific homeowner, it could be a developer of a community, it could be a group using a county facility. But you can point to somebody and say, you're benefiting from the money, you're specifically benefiting from the money that's being collected here. And it pays for a specific surface. So you're getting a building or deck permit. You're renting a pavilion at one of our parks. There's a tie between the money you're paying and a specific service that you're receiving. Fees are optional. You don't have to pay them. Now, if you need a deck, if you want a deck, you have to get a permit. It's not optional once you make the decision, but there's nothing that forces you to build that deck. Unlike taxes, there's no fee that you're required to pay. Now, fees can offset all or part of a cost of providing that service, but not more. We can't make money on providing these services. So unlike taxes, where we have money coming in, services going out, you can't tie $1 to a dollar in to a dollar out. Here, we very specifically can, and we can choose to offset some of the costs of providing these services. Unlike taxes, fees are levied on use. These same ideas I've been talking about. And I kind of jumped ahead of myself on this, but think of fee as cost recovery. In the past, when fees have been discussed, almost inevitably, the commissioners ask two questions. When was the last time we changed the fee? And what are other counties doing? I would argue to you that these might be interesting questions, but are not particularly useful in deciding what you want to do with a fee. Because remember, if you're charging a fee, it's in some way about offsetting the cost. The last time we changed the fee, the costs were probably different. And what somebody is doing in Baltimore County or Frederick County says nothing about what the costs are for us to provide this service. I'll suggest alternate first questions for you. What is the fee now? What's our starting point for this discussion? What should the fee be to provide the intended cost offset? And I bolded the intended cost offset. I'm going to come back to this on the next slide. And what changed? Presumably, if we're saying we need more to cover the cost, some cost changed. What was that? Underneath all of this, I think there's one fundamental decision that should be made when you want to have a fee, and that is how much of the cost do you want the specific user of that fee to cover? That could be 100%, 50%, could be 0%. If that's the case, and you say, well, we don't really need the fee, but that's an okay decision to make. Now, a choice to cover less than 100% of the cost or none of the cost is a valid decision to make. But I think the really important thing to think about here when you're evaluating how much do we want to cover is that the choice is not just how big do we want the fee to be. It's going to be who is going to pay for the cost of this service. Do you want it to be the direct user? Do you want it to be the general taxpayer, or some combination? No right or wrong answers on this, but I believe it ought to be a conscious choice. There might be a fee where you say, you know what, there's no reason for the general taxpayer to participate in this cost at all. So that argues for it being 100%. If you think 0%, what you're really saying is, we don't need a fee. We're just going to provide this service like we do other services out of general tax dollars. Or for various reasons, you could set the mix somewhere else in between. So as we think about managing fees over time, just a couple things to think about. I think you need to make the choice. What percent of cost do you want to cover? If you do that, everything else is just math. We should develop a cost methodology. How are you determining what costs are you trying to cover? There's always going to be alternate methodologies, and if somebody challenges your methodology, they could disagree, but we ought to be in a position to say, this is how we did it. These are the choices we made to set this fee. And they ought to be revisited regularly. This does not happen. I would argue that we ought to look at them maybe once every board, and that doesn't mean you have to change them, but you ought to at least be considering it. What usually happens is some department will say, geez, we really ought to change these, and they come to the commissioners, or a commissioner will question a fee and ask people to come in. And a question of when's the last time we changed it might be 2005, 1998, 1982. And clearly, if your intent is to cover costs, you're no longer doing it. With each passing year, it's more and more out of sync. Okay, that is all I wanted to say. If there's any questions, or you want to tell me my thinking is wrong, we can take that up.
So if we set up a schedule, I guess you'd call it, or methodology, that says that we want to cover 75% of the fees, just throw it out there, and that we want that to be ongoing. So if we did that, would fees reset automatically when costs went up?
You could set it up to do that, sure.
And then we would never have the fees be brought back before us again, so before the board, if we came up with whatever percentage we wanted, and we said automatically increase when our costs increase.
Yep. I think that would be a good approach. Then the only reason it would have to come up is if at some point you wanted to revisit how
The
much of the
percentage,
cost we
right.
want to cover.
Yeah. Okay.
I think you've done a wonderful job of laying this out of what we're potentially faced with. And as a business owner, I think this falls in line with a lot of my philosophies, where I am always constantly monitoring my costs. And sometimes I get so busy, my costs get out of control, and next thing I know, I realize I'm doing jobs for nothing. So this falls in line with that. And I think a good example that we just addressed in this venue is the raising of the rezoning fees. That I think we're charging $125, and we raised it to $800, and because their department realized it was a much more arduous and time-consuming task than originally projected, and that we, as taxpayers, were actually subsidizing some developers. So I think that was a good example of what you're going to do, or we potentially can do here across the board, looking at all those fees. I don't know how big of an impact all these fees have on the overall budget in the future, but I'm sure, since we're nickel and dime and looking at tens of thousands of dollars a year, trying to pinch every place we can, that I think this is a very good part of that arsenal to address their costs and get them under control.
On your, how much of an impact could this have? You'd have to spend some time to go through the whole list and say which ones are really fees. But I don't think you would get to more than $4 million of what we would call fees in our budget. So that's something less than 1% of your general fund budget. So if in theory they all doubled, and I'm not suggesting that they could or should, you could add maybe $4 million to your budget, which is noticeable, but still only 1% of your budget.
But it deserves their attention. I think there's a sense of justice to this too with their constituents, because I've heard from constituents, I think Commissioner Weaver has in the past, about permits department, and people question us as to why they pay certain fees, and having some sort of methodology behind it gives us ground that we can advocate, state that your fee is this for a reason, and I really appreciate that.
All right, anything else? Thank you, Ted.
Thank you for your time.
Interesting as always.
All right. The next item on the agenda, I had asked to be put on, which is to discuss procedural questions as it pertains to the English ordinance that we've seen. And first of all, I want to thank my colleagues for not doing it since I put it on last week. I always try to be mindful of making sure that those that asked for something to be put on the agenda are actually here. So thank you for that decision.
And we didn't want your contagion anyways. I'm glad you stayed.
So I have some questions on this, and that's why I asked for it to be put on. We didn't really decide on what the next step would be other than a hearing, and we didn't decide whether or not we were going to have one hearing or two hearings or three hearings or four hearings or whatever. So I guess that was one of the reasons that I wanted to put it on there. And then the other reason I wanted to be put on here in reference to procedural is going to be a tad bit controversial, if you will. But I've got a question on procedure, Mr. Burke, that I would like to ask you to ensure that I think I know what the answer is, but I need that to come from you.
Okay.
And let me set the stage here first before I ask the question. It's interesting to me. I'm consistently disheartened that the public is so quick to judge things that occur in these sessions and the decisions that we try to make. And I think this is absolutely true in this instance. There's been a labeling of this ordinance and it's being called English only. You know, it's interesting to me, when I've read this ordinance, the word only appears one time. And it's not in the context as to which it has been labeled as. So, I've quite frankly heard enough. And we're getting into a busy time of the year here with budgets and the legislation and everything else. So my procedural question to you, Mr. Burke, is this. I agreed, and I voted for to advance this to a public hearing. Can I make a different decision based on that decision that was made? And I'm not suggesting that I'm going to, but I'm asking it as a procedural question.
Yes, your unofficial guide is Robert's Rules. You would be in the prevailing side. You could make a motion to revisit the topic.
Okay. So, so I'm going to officially make the motion that we revisit the topic at this time.
I'll second that.
The topic being direction to go to public hearing.
That's correct. Any questions on my motion or the second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, that's for objection.
Okay. Okay. All right. So, let me first of all apologize on behalf of myself, and I'm a little bit embarrassed. When I initially asked for this to go to public hearing, I'm going to be brutally honest. I didn't read it. I did not read the ordinance. But after I've had a chance, and I've alluded to this several times today, in this job, I have always, in the last 5 years that I've been here, and Kathy will attest to this, I burn the midnight oil and read everything that is before us. And it's led to many sleepless nights. But this ordinance contains what I think are relevant details and information. And it has been completely mislabeled and has turned into what I believe is absurdity. I mean, just last night, my phone went off for 3 hours with emails from people, and I don't want to speak for them, but I would suggest that 95% of those people have not read the ordinance. The ordinance itself says nothing that or is disrespectful in any way to any of the folks that can't or have trouble speaking the language. As a matter of fact, it states that the use of a common language removes barriers of misunderstanding and helps to unify the citizens of Carroll County. And that's just one part of the wording in this. It speaks of proficiency. It speaks of promoting. But nowhere does it say that we will accept nothing other than the English language. So I'm troubled by the decision that I made, which is why procedurally I asked for this to happen today so that I could see if I could indeed ask this to be revisited, and I appreciate that. I just, based upon all of the homework that I've been doing, I've looked at where these ordinances are in place in other places. I think we're we're approaching 40 states that have these ordinances, or somewhere around there, that similar language. And when I see words in an ordinance like promoting, preserving, strengthening, I'm challenged by why the absurdity that we have seen as a result of discussing this has been put in front of us. Now, I will applaud my colleague, Commissioner Frazier, because I've worked with Dennis now for 5 years, and Dennis and I have agreed to disagree sometimes, and we've had some fantastic discussions and debates over the years. Sometimes Dennis would win, sometimes Steve would lose, sometimes Steve would win and Dennis would. But in the end, it's just as with everything else, and the values that I have and the things in which I grew up upon, we shake hands and we live for another day. This nitpicking behind the scenes that we experience sometimes, and the attacks that are coming from all kinds of areas, I always have trouble with that, because I don't understand that. I really don't. I have a tough time with that. It's not the way I was raised. So anyway, I'm going to stop. I brought this up. I think this is not what it is being labeled as at all. It's interesting. This was presented and approved in 2012 to very little fanfare. And I have changed my mind on proceeding to public hearing. I'll
So-
stop.
It was brought up, I believe, in 2012, but approved actually in 2013 as a county ordinance. I agree with you about when we should go to public hearing, if we should be going to public hearing, and not rush into it, because I'm still doing my homework. Some of that homework, and I've been out and about listening to folks, some a little bit more passionate than others, in, the ordinance itself. Some sharing with me that there are 30-plus states that have an ordinance that is English as an official language. When I looked, and I have read our ordinance in Carroll County, and I look at it in comparison to other states that have that ordinance, or that have that law, it's a cookie cutter. It is exact verbiage. It is a very specific 1 through N list, or A through whatever, exact verbiage being used in other states that is used in Carroll County. So somebody presented, this is the best verbiage to be used for the most part. So that's one. Then when folks say, don't look at other states, let's look at Maryland. I said, okay, let's look at the surrounding counties. And as we know, and we've discussed, out of the 24 jurisdictions, there's only one jurisdiction currently that has English as an official language, and that, I believe, is Queen Anne's. Frederick County used to have it, and they've since rescinded that ordinance. They said, well, don't look at the other counties then. Let's look at Carroll County and the culture and the cost associated. And then I said, okay, we'll do that. So I looked at other counties, and I don't have all 24 counties, but I do have some of the surrounding counties, and asking about what is the cost incurred by translations, because that's the biggest concern. At first it was, I've listened to a few people, and English should be an official language. Then I was told that this is a proactive ordinance to have us not bear a cost in government in translations, because there's so many languages out there that could be translated. So when I did that, the feedback that I'm getting, I don't have all 24, but I'm starting to get feedback, is they have not incurred costs, because people are doing it on their own, and the government, local governments are not incurring costs, and they're directing people to use, whether it's Google or Word or other tools, because the technology is readily available in folks' hands, that they're doing it themselves. So there are no incurred costs from other counties. When I asked if there was incurred cost from Carroll County, and there was none before, and there's none later, or since it's 2013. Then I started looking at, okay, because I am 100% about less regulations. I really believe we should govern at the lowest level with as less regulations as law as possible. And then I look at what does this law actually do? And it brought me back to when I first started in this role through mentorship from our delegation, from Senator Reedy's, Delegate Shoemaker, and Krebs and Rose and all the others. As we were looking at legislation, they said some things should be laws, and then some things should be looked at best practices. Is this one of those situations where we should be looking at this as a best practice or something to encourage and incentivize folks that English is a strong language that should be used in Carroll County, in our culture, and across the United States? Or should it be a law that we are looking to enforce? Because laws are designed to be enforced, to either incentivize somebody from doing something good or challenge somebody if they do something wrong. That's what laws are made for, I believe. And that's what, again, our delegation was very clear to me in saying. Why put laws in place if we're not looking to enforce them? Maybe we should be looking at best practices. Now, that may have been regarding environmental concerns, you know, and they said, these are good best practices, but they should not be laws. So should this be considered a best practice and not necessarily a law? And what I think, I'm not saying one way or the other, so I'm continuing to develop my opinion on this. What I don't want to do is rush into this and have folks come to me very animated one way or the other. Most of the emails that we've received through the county have been to repeal this law. That's from the Carroll County commissioners, emails. However, with that said, folks that I've reached out to and talked to say the opposite. And there's passion on both sides. Some a little bit more animated than others. And with all that said, is I don't want to go into a public hearing to seeing a large group of folks that are so interested and passionate on one side or the other when we haven't figured out, is this a law that should be continued, or is this something that should be a best practice and incentivized? Again, taking it from what our delegation told us to do and mentored,
Maybe
at least
asked.
me, to do. Huh?
Maybe asked, not told.
No, well, you're right, they didn't tell, but they mentored and developed me in making my decisions that things should be best practice and not necessarily laws. And if we're willing to have laws, then we should have a willingness to enforce laws. So that's my two cents. So I agree with you that I want to push this because I still have work to do. And I'm not ready to listen to public comment in its entirety. I'm still willing to reach out to folks, have folks come in and talk to me. And I do appreciate that. I do think we need to address this because it's been brought to our attention and then figure out what the best action is. So I agree with you. We have a lot on our plate. Is this having an effect on us right now? No. Is it an effect on our costs? No. We have a budget and priorities to look at for the budget, and I think we should be working ourselves through that, and then take a look at this and say when you should come back here. So
I do agree with a lot of what you've said here. I've started asking some people, have you read the ordinance? And 99% of them have not. It's word of mouth and perception of what's in it. What's actually in it is something different than what perception is, so. Go ahead.
I'd like to add that I've talked to an African-American teacher that moved into this jurisdiction and an Asian businessman, and never once did they reference the English official language as any type of deterrent to them moving in this district. That their reasons for moving here was the public safety and the quality of education. So nowhere did I hear this as an issue discussed. As far as the language of this ordinance, I'd like to read off section 10.4 and section 10.5. The declaration and use of English as the official language of Carroll County shall not be construed as an infringement upon the rights of any person to use a language other than English. Also, nothing in this ordinance shall be interpreted as conflicting with the laws of the United States of America or the laws of the state of Maryland. And the reason that's in there is we must be in compliance with the Civil Rights Act of 1964, Title IV. And if we were not in compliance with federal law, this would have been removed a long time ago. So the fact remains, the language in this ordinance is in compliance with the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And it's been pointed out that a lot of people are suffering from ignorance on this subject, not in a rude way, but the mere fact is everyone's not thoroughly up to speed and educated on this, and that we are in compliance with federal law, that we are not out to discriminate or intimidate anyone, and that if they just take the time to read the language of the ordinance, they'd understand that it's quite innocuous, and it was, I believe, passed for political reasons. And since it has done no damage to us, I don't see any damage. We're not preventing the expensive costs of printing, or I don't think it's inhibiting anyone from moving in the county. I believe just let it lie.
But should laws be put in place for political reasons? I mean,
Well,
shouldn't laws be put in place to either incentivize good or deter bad, and not for political reasons? I mean, that's my whole point is we should be looking at best practices.
It's a very good point.
Exactly what you just said. In the law, it says to reduce costs, and that's why have costs been reduced, and look at the communities where these type of laws have been put in place, or where they haven't been, have costs been reduced. And I was passionately told otherwise from others, and all I'm doing is defining what's in the words. And, but if a law is put in for political reasons, like you just said, is that the right reason a law should be put in place?
I will state that it was, in my opinion, it was put in place for political reasons. And in consideration of it having no negative ramifications, that for us to take the initiative to reverse it would be political as well. And I think we'd be guilty of the exact same thing as their predecessors.
I don't think, I don't think it's political.
That's not where I was trying to go here. I appreciate your opinion, as I do all of my colleagues, but that's not anywhere where I was going with it. And I'm gonna let you go here, Dennis, because I would be remiss if I didn't do that, but, and you can read all the sections that you want, but, even to get so far as just down to the middle of the first page where it says proficiency in the English language, as well as other languages, benefits Carroll County both economically and culturally, and should be encouraged. If that doesn't tell you that this is not what it is being labeled as, then I'm not so sure what does.
Right.
Dennis?
I do agree that this was put in for political reasons, which is a reason not to have it, if you ask me. And I also believe it was put in for intimidation purposes. I really do. And the fact is, as everyone has pointed out, hardly anyone has actually read this and knows what it says or doesn't say. But the perception on the street about what this is why this is harmful. I have been, just the other night, I was out at Panera Bread, not to endorse any particular restaurant, but I was out at Panera Bread having dinner, and a lady who knew me came down and sat down next to me, talked about many, many things, and she brought this up, and how she was very passionate against this ordinance. And I said, slow down. I'm actually against it myself. I understand what you're saying. Just at the fire meeting for the Westminster Fire Department last night, doing the oath for the new officers, someone from there came up to me and started talking to me about this, and they're against it, and they think it should be done away with. Now, did they read the ordinance? Not, I don't know. But what's out there is that this is a intimidation it's put out there for intimidation. It's put out there for anti-immigration. It's put out there to keep certain people out of Carroll County. That is the perception. I don't like that perception. The fact that this does absolutely nothing, and it does absolutely nothing. If you read through it, there's no reason to have this ordinance because it does nothing. So what is the reason for the ordinance? It must be something else. And that something else, I think, goes against, I would like to believe, what the core beliefs are of people that live in Carroll County. And that's why I would like to get rid of it. I don't want to just leave it sit because it does absolutely nothing, because there is perception of what it does do. I don't like that perception. And believe me, I have heard a lot about it. Even though I'm the one that brought this up, and I would like to repeal it, people come, oh, that we should never have this. I know, I know. People are jumping on me about that. But I just don't think it's in the best interest of Carroll County to keep this on the books. If you, well, I think I've said enough. And also, said enough about that, so I'll say something else. Also, I'm kind of upset that this hasn't gone to public hearing yet. How long ago did we say we want to move this to public hearing, and there's delay? Why? Let's move. Now, if we want to take a reason not to move it forward to public hearing, like you want to do more research or you want to look at it, okay, that would be reasonable. But I think we should set a date if we're going to move this forward for a public hearing. I don't think this is a major thing, and I love that when the people say, don't we have more important things like the opioid epidemic, or we have the budget to do? Of course we have other things to do. Does that mean we can't do this as well? I mean, I think we can all multitask here. We all, everyone here, besides doing this particular thing, has other jobs, other responsibilities. We do many things. So that argument just, it bothers me when I hear, well, how important is this? It's not the top thing on the list, but it's something that should be taken care of.
I will say that, being a lover of history, I found out that President John Adams, the second president of the United States, tried to make English the official language of the United States, and it was knocked down by the United States Congress.
And it still is. English is not the official language of the United States. There are 31 or 32 plus the territories that are English is the official language. From California to Florida, English is the official language. Puerto Rico, English is the official language. Also is Spanish because of Puerto Rico, but it is the official language. West Virginia, most recently, along with Michigan. So it goes across the country. Those are states where they have determined that English should be the official language, and most of the laws and ordinances are the exact same ordinance verbatim, in many cases, as Carroll County's. And that's why when people say, well, look at other states, that's what I did. And then they say, look at other counties. I said, I did, or with resources. That's where I want to continue to do, to have the clearest picture possible. And should this be a continued law for Carroll County, or should it be, as our delegation has directed us and suggested, best practices may be the most suitable approach, especially if we want a less regulatory, because I just don't want people coming on top of us with laws. And we should be able to govern ourselves. So that's where I'm thinking.
Well, we are publicly elected officials, and I believe it's best we individually represent our constituencies on this issue as our constituents come forward and ask us to represent them on this issue. There's no telling where each one of us will eventually fall, but I just hope that we're all representative to our constituencies and reflect their opinion on this issue and how we eventually vote on this.
But I do think it should be moved forward to a public hearing, and I do think it should be voted on by us. I think we should do that. Now, the timing, if you want to delay it, but I also would like to, if we're going to move forward with this, I'd like to pin down a date for the public hearing. If you want to put it off a month or 2 weeks or whatever, okay, but let's pin down a date if we're going in that direction, because I think we need to move. I don't think this should just be left out there waving around until someone says, okay, let's look at it, because there will always be something for us to do. No matter what we get done, something else always jumps in the spot. When the budget is done, something else jumps in. When there's always 1,000 things to do in this job, and there are, and you all know that. So I think we need to, if we're going to move forward with this, and I personally believe we should set a date for a public hearing. If you want to put that date out a little bit, okay, but let's do it.
This was initiated by
Me.
your constituents, bringing it to your attention. Not my constituents, but
I was driving through your things and went to stop.
But, when it came up, I was empathetic to the fact that, you having heard from your constituents, you as a representative of the people deserve a chance to bring it before the board.
And I'm saying, I don't just hear from people that live in District 3. That's not the way it is. I hear from people
All right,
throughout
well,
the county and outside the
You've
county as
heard
well.
from other people as well.
Right.
To include the entire county, all the community, not just a district of
Correct.
constituents, but the entire, because I'm hearing the same thing. I can tell you from friends and neighbors from every one of our districts, you know, it's not our constituent, it's our county. And I think we gotta continue from our role here is to look at this as our county and not our constituents in this district, but, you know, our entire community and neighbors and friends.
And even some from other counties.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, well,
That's a different story.
that's a whole different.
I know.
Well, I will argue that I've heard it too, and when I'm approached, the first question I ask is, have you read it? And then it stops the conversation.
I know.
Because 99.5% of the folks that I've talked to have no idea what it says. They're only going on how it was labeled.
Right.
And it was labeled by the press and others completely wrong, because that's not what it is. That's my point for bringing it up again. That's why I changed my mind and wanted to get to the procedure part here to see if I could indeed bring it up, because it has no, it's not what, it's that proverbial wolves in sheep clothing, because that's not what it says. And I would argue a little bit about the immigration part. Back when this was introduced in 12 and 13, what were we hearing about immigration and the walls? Oh, I know, nothing.
No, that's not true, but.
Not. That all came to light beginning in 2014, or I'm sorry, 2016. So there was not that, things,
It wasn't then like it
things
is
were
now. I'll agree
completely,
with that.
things were completely different back in 2012 and 13 when this was being discussed. You know, we oftentimes attach ourselves to what's happening now and forget about what was happening then, and it was not part of that then. So, I see no reason for it. I'm going to disagree. I see no reason for it to go to public hearing. Now, I could be swayed a little bit with what you're saying, but you know, when I ask folks to read it and they get back to me, and a lot of them have, they say, "Oh, okay."
Right. Well, since it does absolutely nothing, why do you think it's there?
For politics.
So why should it be there?
Right.
That's
It
the
does
thing.
no harm.
It does, that's not true. If that was true, I wouldn't say a word about it. It's not, it does no harm. It does harm. It harms this county, and it does. If it did nothing, I could care less, because it, and on the face, it does absolutely nothing. So why is it there? It's there for a political reason. There's no other reason for it to be on our ordinances. There's no other reason at all. It should be
Honestly,
taken out.
when I'm trying to push it to, like, settle this, not get to public hearing, I apologize, but Eric, you're pushing me in the opposite direction. By saying that something is political is not the reason to do something, and that's why it does concern me. You're giving me the reason to go to public hearing. A lot of the folks coming up to me from the county have been on both sides of this argument. A public hearing would allow, like you said, you know, appropriately, for the community to voice their opinions and allow us to make the best decision on what is best for our community, our county. That's why I think going to public hearing is an important role, because it gives us that opportunity to really listen to folks. For everyone here, there's somebody there, but give us time and opportunity to listen to folks. That's what the public hearing allows us to do. If we look at this law as only political, it is absolutely not the right reason to have a law. If we look at it for the rationale and the reasons associated within the specifics of the law, then we should look at, okay, what is the activity happening? Does it preclude cost? Does it incentivize folks for learning? It's very specific in here. And then it says, on the other page, all of the exceptions. And all the exceptions basically allow us to do pretty much everything we want. Building commerce and tourism and everything. I mean, it doesn't preclude us from doing anything. So what is the real impact of this law? And if the impact, like you just said, is nothing, and if the reason was political only, those are two things that shouldn't go together.
Why don't you put it up for referendum?
We don't have that ability.
We can't.
We don't have the ability
Yeah, we
to
can't
have a
do that.
referendum.
Can't do that?
But I would ask a question.
would be nice.
What, and neither here, don't take this out of the wrong way. What more are you expecting to hear that we haven't already heard at a public hearing?
Well, I'm not expecting
Other
anything
than
different.
folks being
but
able to
the
get up
fact
in front
is
of the
that-
microphone
no,
and stand there and go, look at me.
It'll
Because
move us
it
to a
has to go to
decision.
public hearing if we're going to rescind it.
That's not my
why.
question.
I don't expect to hear anything different, I've already heard.
I know.
But the procedure is it has to go to public
I
hearing because it's
understand
an
that,
ordinance.
which is why I brought up procedures today. I
Well,
understand
there's
that.
no way to get to rescind the ordinance without going to public hearing.
Right.
Is that correct?
That's right.
So that's why I'm asking for the public hearing. I'm not asking because I expect to hear something different.
Okay,
'cause
well,
I
that
don't.
was my question.
Okay.
I get the procedures,
Okay.
I got that. My question is, what more do any of you expect to hear that we haven't already heard? Other than giving folks a platform to
Right.
say, look at me. Because I quite frankly have heard enough.
I want to get this over with.
But I'm not convinced to whether it should be, if it should be rescinded or not. And that's the challenge. That's where I'm at. I can't, I'm still trying to build this on its value of the law. And I cannot be convinced one way or the other. In order for us to have both ways, it's gotta go to public hearings for us to then make the decision to either keep it or rescind it. If we don't go to public hearing, then we're limiting ourselves to only one choice. And that's where I'm not ready to say, this is the best thing since sliced bread and we should keep it in law, because, like you said, Eric, it's political and it does nothing. Those are two things that, again, our delegation, as we go to them for state laws, they tell us those should not be the reasons. We should be looking at best practices and not necessarily the law. So that's where I want to have those conversations.
No, we can't put this out for public survey. We can't put it on a referendum. So, the
Well,
bottom
could we do a Survey Monkey or something just to
No,
build
well,
on this?
I think
that's not.
I think we've already done that.
I know.
Anyway.
You
Have
can,
heard-
but
have
you
you
still
read
need the
this?
public hearing.
As Steve said, we've heard
I
both
know.
sides. Everybody's gonna come to,
I
we've
mean-
already heard it.
It's been about
At this
equal.
point, and I don't think we're gonna hear from any others, but we haven't heard from the silent majority in the county as such, or a lot of them.
That's the point.
I don't know, I'm, it was the same group we hear from
I
all
know.
the time. I mean, it's,
Yeah, it is the same group,
I know.
so,
On both sides.
on both
It's
sides,
the
right?
same groups.
Yeah, and it's interesting because it's, if you really delve into who we're hearing from, you wanna talk partisanship?
It's the same 2013 group, because if you look at the public hearing from 2013, it's the same folks that were testifying, we're listening to.
Yeah.
No, I get it.
Yeah.
I wasn't here in
Yeah.
2013, but I looked
Yeah,
at
I
the
was,
videos.
well, I was, but I wasn't. I was sitting out there in 2013, so, well, I respect that you think you wanna see more, or do more, or hear more. And listen, it's how I roll. I respect all of my colleagues. That's the way I've been rolling over the last 5 years. We had some interesting debates here over the last 5 years.
you think?
And we've been dealt some interesting hands over the last 5 years.
I don't want to shut off the possibility of public hearing, so why can't we table this to
Well-
get to another point?
Okay, I mean, I think we can,
I don't know.
I don't know what tabling means.
Well, putting it
You know,
off for
ta-
6 months, putting it off for a few months, allowing
But
us to.
I don't know what that
How about
does.
if we
You table it,
I don't know.
Tim, if you table it, Robert's Rules of Order.
Put them on the spot. It's like public math.
Table the chair, you tell us.
You make a motion to table it, and then at some point, someone can bring it back up.
Why don't we make a motion to hold a public hearing in 30 days? That way you've got 30 days to look this over. It'll be done before the budget. It'll be out of the way.
Well, any of us can make a motion anytime.
I know, I don't wanna make a motion, like, no, okay. forget
Well, I
that.
make a motion to table this to a further date,
I want a motion
undefined.
To
That's my
avoid.
motion. I wanna
Indefinite
I
table.
wanna table this at this point until it's brought up to a further date.
Is there a second?
I'll second that. So we just throw it back to where we're at before.
Yeah,
Basically.
Which is accomplishing nothing. I'm sorry. It's not. I've heard enough, I've read enough, I've seen enough. You know how I'm gonna vote on that motion.
Well,
I don't know, that's all for it.
wait a minute.
Tabling it does nothing. It's almost like, with all due respect, abstaining.
Well, explain to me what the alternative motion would be,
It's not abstaining.
because you might convince me to
The
withdraw
other
my
version
second.
would be, let's vote on a public hearing, we'll set a date for it. I mean, I can't make that motion right now since there's a motion already on the floor.
Yeah, you had your chance.
I was going to, you jumped right on it. I was just catching my breath and Ed jumps in here.
It's called a single.
Help me out, what would be the alternative
Well, there's all kinds of alternatives. There's one of them.
besides that?
That's the obvious best one.
Well,
The other alternative would be, where I was gonna go is, I was gonna make the motion that we not go to public hearing.
And then just drop it entirely?
Well, that would, yeah,
All
be
right.
part of that.
Yeah,
Then
motion.
I will withdraw my second. If you wanna make that motion?
Well, no,
Well,
I'm not
we have
sa-
a motion here.
You asked for alternatives.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting that's an alternative. That's all. Let's be clear. So you either keep it, are you withdrawing or not?
I'll withdraw the second on Commissioner Rothstein's motion.
All right, is there a second? Is your motion still on the,
yes.
is there a second to his?
Is the table still on
motion?
the table? Is the motion to table still on the table?
Yes. And now it's off the table if it's been done.
Okay, hearing
that's
none,
fine.
it's
Got
off.
it.
Commissioner Frazier.
I'd like to make a motion that we send this ordinance to public hearing in 30 days.
Is there a second?
Or it could be 31 if that's better.
Oh, in that case.
That's what I'm making, you know, I'm trying to figure.
Negotiable, 31, 32. Is there a second to that motion?
Everybody's striking out. It's like there's a really good pitcher.
All right, so that motion's off the table. I'm gonna make the motion that we do not go to public hearing for ordinance 2013-01.
Second.
Now we're getting somewhere, maybe. Discussion on that motion. Okay, hearing none,
I was thinking.
I'll give you some time. Discuss, that gives you time.
Well, the thinking.
Now, let's be clear here, let's be clear. I apologize.
Go ahead, go ahead.
This doesn't mean that it can't be brought back up, is that correct, Mr. Burke?
That's right.
So, in essence,
Got it.
you don't need me to explain that.
No, got it.
I'm not gonna explain it.
Good.
You're welcome.
No discussion heard.
Is there any discussion on that motion? I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
Okay.
If you would've said 31, 32 days.
Okay.
Let's move on.
All right. Anything else? Well, I've got,
Wait.
let's do the
We have
minutes
public
first.
comment.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Public comment.
I'm sorry, we have I apologize. Public comment.
Yes, so I think we had two, but I believe, Ms. Sarah Gallins has left the room. There's no one outside, can you do it?
Did we bore her?
There's no one. Just making sure. But while we're doing that, in the meantime, Mr., no one? Yeah, okay, Mr. William Regan. And the timer is not working, so I will use the timer on my phone.
It's all good.
Just play Jeopardy music.
Huh?
Pardon me?
Can you hold off on the timer for a minute?
No.
I want to weigh on that public.
No,
You,
no, s-
you are up for.
you're up for public comment, sir, with 3 minutes.
What I wanted to say was I'm in favor of.
Please
the-
introduce yourself first.
My name is William Riggin. I live at 906 Ridge Road in Finksburg. I'm represented by Mr. Weaver, and I just wanted to say.
I'm sorry for you, I'm just going.
I wanted to say that I'm in favor of the English only. That's beside the point, but I came here today to, I represent a group of people that are concerned about a junkyard that Buzzy Schama runs in Finksburg. I'm sure, I don't know if all of you are aware of it, but many of you may be aware of it. At any rate, I want to read something to you. This came from Carroll County Commissioners' Environmental Principles dated 10/5/11. We believe that the environment is important and must be carefully maintained. The air we breathe, the land we tend, and the food and water we consume must be clean and safe in order to ensure that we maintain our health, safety, and quality of life. That comes from you guys, or maybe not you, but this group of people. So my concern is not necessarily with the junkyard that Buzzy Schama had originally there, or his father had originally made or created, but the concern is with the junkyard that he has created across the road from his junkyard now. I'm sure that if any of you went out and looked at what he has there, you would be strongly opposed to what he's doing. I've talked to numerous people in the county on numerous occasions, and nothing, I mean nothing, is being done about what he is doing, and matter of fact, it gets worse every day. And I complained on numerous occasions to the zoning people. I've recently contacted the Maryland Department of the Environment about what he's doing. In addition to what he does there, he also does numerous things in other places that, whether or not you're aware of it, but there's my 3 minutes. I just.
No, you're fine, you're fine, keep going. Yeah,
No,
that
I
was-
just want,
yeah.
and
Keep going.
my concern, I represent this group of people only because everybody else works, and I'm retired, so I am the unofficial spokesman for this group. So, and I know, I've been told that there's nothing that can be done, but I can't hardly believe that's the truth, because he has created this junkyard. I've only lived there since, on Ridge Road since 2002, but most of just about my entire life has been in Carroll County, and I'm sure that what he's done there with zoning or with whatever how he's getting away with it, I have no clue. The Department of the Environment, they say, I just talked to a guy this morning by the name of Sedano. He told me this is a county issue first and foremost, so see what the county can do for you.
20
And
seconds.
Okay, I've done that. And second off, I've gone to the Department of Health, Maryland Department of Health. They have done nothing for me. They have done nothing for us. I only say me because I represent this group. I'm their voice, so I appreciate your help.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay,
That's it.
all right, we'll take your comments under advisement, sir, and we appreciate you staying here and watching that entire lovely session that we had this morning. All right, I've got minutes to approve from a closed session that occurred on January the 30th.
Correct.
In reference to land acquisition.
Did you motion to approve, Commissioner
Yeah,
Williams?
move to approve, yeah.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Everybody have a chance to look at it? All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll abstain because I was absent.
And then we have minutes from open session, which at the very last page from a week ago Tuesday when we had the visioning session.
I'm sorry, where are you talking?
The very last piece of paper in your book. Should be the very last.
Oh, visioning session?
Okay, so the visioning session that occurred on the 28th, I'll need a motion to
approve.
accept those.
Motion to accept.
Second.
All those in favor?
Can I have 1
Aye.
second? That's
Oh,
first
I'm
I've
sorry,
seen this.
sorry.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah, I just want to read it first.
No, that's good, okay. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
He was having trouble with his visioning.
It took me a while to find it. I thought it'd be here, but it was
All right.
over there.
County Administrator, anything else for open admin?
No, sir.
All right, we'll go into agendas. Ms. Hoover? while she's making her way up here, I want to remind folks that there is a display case in the lobby here of the county office building that is often not looked at. And it gets changed out with various displays in I don't know how often it goes, but it stays there.
A month or
and-
two, three
Yeah.
sometimes, depending.
But the new display.
Are you in it?
Is artifacts from the old Charles Carroll Elementary School. And it's very interesting. It's a part of our history that I think folks would be interested in seeing. So I remind those that are watching, or those that have already tuned out, that are going to watch again, or whatever, spread the word. Take a second when you're roaming the building to stop and look at the display case, whatever the display is, because folks from other organizations come in and do a remarkable job of putting great items down there that are of great public interest. Week of February the 10th, on the 11th, is the annual Carroll County Ag Center Dinner.
Yeah, on the 10th, I will be at the.
Oh, I'm sorry.
With the Board of Ed, with the tech tour.
Okay.
Just for.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, on the 11th is the annual Carroll County Ag Center Dinner, and everyone, Wance, Rothstein, Weaver, and Boucher. Wednesday the 12th, myself and Commissioner Rothstein will be attending the BWI Business Partnership Breakfast in Linthicum. And then we're going to leave there and make our way to Annapolis for the MACO meeting. Commissioner Frazier will be at the Board of Education meeting at 5 p.m. On Thursday, the 13th, we have our open session to include discussion on school buses and the stop arm violation system. We're going to exercise rural legacy easements, and that's it right now. That's probably going to grow. That evening at 5 p.m. is Carroll Biz Challenge. Commissioner Rothstein will be exciting the crowd with opening remarks. And at 6.
Can you put me down for that? I'd like to be there for that.
He only wants to be there because of what I said about the exciting
You're looking
comments.
forward to hear what I have to
wanna
say.
hear what Rothstein
Okay.
has
That's all.
to
That's
say.
the reason he's going. That's the only reason he's going.
Don't worry, I'll use small words for you.
Wow. 6:30 that evening is Families Against Substance Abuse presentation at Winters Mill. Commissioners Boucher and Frazier will be attending that. On the 15th, Commissioner Weaver has an Eagle Scout Court of Honor ceremony in Westminster, and Commissioner Boucher has the podcast. February the 17th, a reminder that the county offices are closed in observance of well, there's been a little joke in previous
We're missing the picture.
administrations.
You're missing the picture.
So I'm not gonna go there. I'll just,
It's,
no.
it's in
no.
honor
Let
of
it-
President
I'm gonna be at
Wance.
district night, so.
Okay.
It's Wance Day?
So anyway, we are closed in observation of President's Day. I'm
Okay.
leaving it go at that.
Well, thank you.
5:30 p.m. is Delegation District 5 night in Annapolis. Rothstein's going, Wance is going, Weaver's going, not going, going. I don't know. I could be a, what do you call those
Auctioneer.
guys? Yeah, that's it.
No, you can't.
Never mind.
No.
All right, Tuesday the 18th is the Veterans Advisory Meeting, Commissioner Weaver
I'll be attending that
and
as well.
Commissioner
Thank you.
Rothstein. Wednesday finds Commissioner Rothstein and myself in Annapolis again. Not sure why, we go down there all the time. Also, the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore Board meeting is 2 p.m. that day in Catonsville. Commissioner Rothstein. Carroll Community College Board meeting where Commissioner Weaver will begin the evening being well-fed. It's a good gig over there. Gotta tell you, it's a good gig. All right, Thursday, right, Dennis? Good gig, yeah, there you go. Thursday the 20th, open session, stormwater management construction, oversight, Langdon Stormwater Facility, boy, we're all about stormwater, and that'll grow as well. Thursday, the 11th, also at 11:30, I'll be attending the Governor's Emergency Management Advisory Council meeting in Savage. And it is also at noon, the county budget luncheon with Ted, and Commissioners Weaver and Frazier will be attending that.
I'll also be attending that.
And
Thank you.
Rothstein?
Yep.
Friday, the 21st at 9 a.m. is the Carroll County Student Government Association General Assembly at Francis Scott Key High School. Commissioner Boucher is attending that, and Commissioner Rothstein has the podcast. All right. Anything else on agendas? As if I needed, you all last Thursday touched on the things that we do, and I'm not going to go down through that list again. We're going to do that every last Thursday of the month. But I will share that two things. Our Director of Public Works, our Deputy Director of Public Works, Doug Brown, has also been appointed to the Governor's Emergency Management Advisory Council, so I look forward to working with him. He's driving. So that's good. And I've recently been asked to serve as an ex officio on the Baltimore Convention and Tourism Board. Mayor Jack Young reached out to me, probably because I've been talking a lot about how Baltimore City and the problems, and you heard Mike today talk about how Governor Hogan made that one of the focuses of his address yesterday. But I've been talking to Jack a lot about, how Baltimore City drives the engine of the state of Maryland. So because I talk too much, Jack reached out to me and asked if I would serve as an ex officio member on there. So again, our regional approach, and you see that Commissioner Rothstein's gone to the Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore. All of us are involved in talking with our regional colleagues, and so I look forward to serving with Jack on that.
You don't
So,
talk too much.
Thank you.
No.
I appreciate
You talk
it.
way too much. No, I'm kidding.
Second.
Sure, keep going.
Okay. Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We're all hungry, Roberta.
All right, so wait a minute now. Did you have something or not?
Just that March and April, we're going to be census,
All right.
displays in
That's important.
Yeah, and you know what? I forgot to, because when Linda was here, I wanted to get an update on that.
They will be providing you an update again.
Okay.
on December.
When does that officially kick?
It actually has started in, some remote areas of Alaska.
Alaska's
but
already started.
April
Yeah.
first is Census Day, and, people will be receiving their postcards mid-March. So people will actually be able to start taking it as early as mid-March.
Okay.
So you will get an update from, the census crew, here, the staff, on 22nd.
And it'll also be in different facilities throughout the county.
Sorry.
It'll be in different facilities throughout the county for people to register.
You will hear all about
Yeah.
it on the 22nd.
Okay.
I mean, it's been
Yep.
a very wide,
Right.
inclusive group working
Right.
across the county to get the message out.
Okay. And to my colleagues, I know I got a motion second, but one other thing I wanted to share with you, sorry. We're making some really good progress with our Director of Fire and Emergency Medical Services to U3. We just, Ed and I want to share that with a pool of about, I think at 38 or so started, we're down to around 7 or 8, and we continue to work very diligently to put really good candidates in front of the 5 of us. So we're hopeful that that April 1st, which I don't really want to do it on that day, because April Fool's Day is typically not a good day to do much of anything. Although, boy, there's a joke here, but I'm not going to do it.
That should be election day.
You're
Yeah.
not doing much of anything, or what? No, keep going.
Okay, anyway, we're making progress, and I need the 3 of you to know that, because we're getting there. So,
We're gonna
okay.
call for the question in a minute.
Weaver's calling for the question. All those in favor of adjournment? Aye. Thank you. We are adjourned.
More hungry.